Everything begins on yet another ordinary day in a sunny city with a bright blue sky and an apparently peaceful atmosphere. Some people believe that ordinary days can sometimes feel abnormal. In the middle of the seemingly quiet city, a man asks the driver to wait a second. The taxi then stops at a sidewalk near a cafe, and the man gets out. He walks up to the door of a beautiful and well-organized flower shop. As he enters the store, a clerk welcomes him. A green plant, half hidden among others, catches our protagonist's attention. He then points at it and asks about that plant. The saleswoman replies that this plant is popularly known as the money tree because its leaves resemble coins. He liked it so much that he asked to take one, and while the clerk was wrapping up the little green plant, a radio on the counter began broadcasting the local news. The radio loudly announced that the storm from last week had caused so much damage that the government declared it a natural phenomenon. The saleswoman heard it and doubted that the storm had happened naturally, and according to her, events that big aren't just natural. While wrapping the green plant, she looks at our friend and asks if he had seen any pictures of the storm. The clerk wouldn't stop talking about the storm, while the man just kept thinking that, in truth, he had actually been present at that battle. In that battle that took place in the middle of the ocean, there was a furious dragon. The man looks straight into the eyes of the raging dragon as he draws a dagger. He comments on how long it's been since he fought a dragon, let alone two in the same day. The furious dragon responds with a deafening roar that shakes everything and stirs the ocean. Immediately, the man reacts to the dreadful roar, charging at the dragon with his dagger drawn. When he reaches the dragon, a flash bursts in the middle of the ocean, causing a huge impact. Then his memory is violently interrupted by the clerk's voice asking if he didn't think the world was really a mess. Our friend picks up the wrapped plant and simply agrees with everything the clerk said. Leaving the store, he says goodbye and wishes her a good day at work, and she thanks him. After the man leaves the store, the clerk notices it's really hot. To cool off, she pulls down the scarf over her head, revealing her large elf ears. The saleswoman opens the store door to talk to another employee while the man continues on his way without looking back. As he walks toward the taxi, the people in the city no longer seem as normal as they once did. Inside the taxi, the man thanks the driver for waiting and asks him to go on. The cab driver moves forward through the city, which still seems to be having just another normal day. Inside the car, the troll driver says he doesn't look like he's on vacation and asks what he was doing in Gangwon province. We then see the city from afar on a beautiful morning with its buildings and towers. Among all those tall buildings, there's one that looks different, an office. But the city isn't made of just offices. We also have dangerous, armed groups roaming the streets. We also have magical groups performing secret sacrificial rituals in basements. And to top it off, mystical beasts sleeping inside laboratory capsules. But not everything is peaceful all the time. Our story takes place on a planet at the edge of space, where we follow an immigration office agent who manages and regulates aliens. The man in the taxi asks the driver if there's anything to do besides working and playing around. The driver looks in the rearview mirror and agrees with the agent's words, and he keeps striding, saying that working or playing weren't such different ways of living in that city. The two continue their ride, agreeing that they are too sick and tired from working so much. In this city, working with abnormal beings seems very exhausting. Sitting in his office, the man wonders if there's any way to live in this world without working. At the clinic, the doctor tells our protagonist, Mr. Yi Min-jun, that he seems to be extremely exhausted. The doctor checks the clock and sees that there are still 3 minutes left. Yi Min-jun agrees, saying he's truly tired after doing the same work for so long. The doctor types into the medical record the symptoms that the patient confirms he's experiencing. He looks at Yi Min-jun and says that maybe he's mentally exhausted. Our protagonist is so tired that he seems down and can't even keep his eyes open. The doctor hands him a box of medicine and asks him to take it, saying that maybe it will help him feel better. Yi Min-jun looks at the box and asks the doctor how long he'll have to keep taking that medicine. The doctor looks at him and says he'll be taking it for at least 23 years, because his follow-up appointment is only in 23 years. He looks at the box, a bit upset, because there really are a lot of pills in there. He quickly realizes that after prescribing medication, the consultation is considered over, and the doctors expect patients to leave. He gets up from the chair and says goodbye, and the doctor says he'll be waiting for him in 23 years. Yi Min-jun slams the door as he leaves. After Yi Min-jun leaves the office, the doctor decides to dig deeper into his data on the computer. He analyzes the information carefully. The doctor scrolls through the computer screen with his flippers and continues reading Yi Min-jun's data. The system prompts him to give an honest opinion about the patient. He looks at the screen and wonders if there really is no way to live in this world without working. On the computer screen, he chooses the option to keep Yi Min-jun in the work field for another 23 years. After all, living a life without working is not an option, because in this world, those who stop working end up dying. On a spring afternoon, Lee Min-jun steps out of his trailer and decides to take a walk through the garden. He looks at the people on the street and admires how pleasant the day seems. Suddenly, his phone starts vibrating like crazy with an alert message. Not just his phone, but everyone's phones around him begin to sound alerts. The alert indicated supernatural activity nearby and called for immediate evacuation of all people. Lee Min-jun notices that everyone is receiving alerts at the same time. Immediately, he receives a phone call. He answers and speaks with a woman who tells him he has a job to do. From the office, she asks if he knows anything about the robbery happening at the bank. Our friend says he's ready for the job, but first asks what the payment is for this mission. After settling the details, he hangs up the phone and leaves the trailer. Lee Min-jun looks at the phone and reflects on how tired he is of doing this kind of work. After his reflection, he just gathers the courage and goes. At that moment, the entrance of the bank is a mess, with police cars and yellow tape keeping people away. Our agent identifies himself at the entrance to the officers and gets access to the scene of the robbery. As Lee Min-jun enters, a police officer looks back. The officer is startled because he recognizes our agent. Our agent greets Jongpal and asks for more details about the robbery. The officer says the crime was committed by a single person. Outside, reporters try to film and record the event while police try to push everyone back. After the officer's explanation, the agent says he's taking over the case. Knowing that our agent has a different kind of job, the officer realizes that maybe the case is worse than he thought. Lee Min-jun draws 4 golden cards in his hand. The cards ignite, and he throws them into the air. In the sky, the cards open a red portal right above him. White smoke starts pouring out from the center of the portal. The portal begins releasing smoke over all the buildings in the city. People start looking at the smoke, which already covers part of the sky, and say it must be the work of some kind of magician. Our agent says goodbye to Lieutenant Jongpal and vanishes into all that white smoke. Jongpal shouts to the surrounding crowd, informing them that from now on, the operation is under immigration agency jurisdiction. Amid all the chaos, a police intern runs up asking to speak with Lieutenant Jongpal. The breathless young man asks if immigration agents aren't supposed to be the ones who catch people in the country illegally, because Lee Min-jun just looked like an ordinary Korean guy. Jongpal asks if he didn't learn in school the difference between an office and an immigration agency. The young intern replies that if he had studied enough, he wouldn't be working for the police. Come to think of it, his answer was based on an agency, not an office, because our agent, who was solving the case at that very moment, works for an office. Jongpal explains that agencies handle cases involving people from far away, and the young man questions why Lee Min-jun was hired by an agency and not an office. The lieutenant explains that immigration agencies deal with people coming from places far beyond what one could imagine. At that moment, smoke still lingered in the sky and covered the entire bank. Lee Min-jun, inside the bank, says the intruder seems to have come from somewhere farther than he thought. Security cameras managed to catch No Jung-gu taking an elderly woman hostage. Watching the footage, our agent suspects that the robber committed the crime because he needed a job. He doubts No Jung-gu's supernatural abilities, since if he were really special, he wouldn't need to rob a bank. The assailant yells at Lee Min-jun and notices that he's at the scene of the crime. Our agent observes the criminal holding an innocent old lady hostage inside the bank. No Jung-gu yells, asking if his demands to release the hostage were met. Lee Min-jun replies that no one has done anything. The assailant gets furious because it seems no one is taking him seriously. In a fit of rage, he reacts by destroying a nearby plant pot, releasing a green smoke from his hands. Our agent recognizes the act and realizes the man possesses telekinesis. The furious assailant throws the plant pot toward the agent and asks if he thinks this is all a joke. Lee Min-jun watches the object flying toward him and catches it with one hand, blocking the pot's impact. Our agent throws the object to the floor while the assailant looks at him in shock. No Jung-gu keeps shouting, saying if Lee Min-jun doesn't leave, he'll hurt the old lady. He was holding her so tightly that she was visibly uncomfortable. While the assailant seemed to grow increasingly angry, our hero remained perfectly calm. Lee Min-jun asks him why he doesn't release the hostage, but the assailant simply ignores the question. Our agent says he'll give No Jung-gu one last chance to surrender, promising not to hurt him if he accepts the offer. At that moment, the assailant feels challenged and starts to emit green vapor from his skin. He tries to strike Lee Min-jun. Our agent watches the assailant's failed attempt and, now out of patience, pulls golden cards from his jacket. He throws 4 golden cards forward. The first card locks into the ceiling on the right. The second card locks into the ceiling on the left. The third card locks into the floor on the right. The fourth card locks into the floor on the left. At that moment, Lee Min-jun's magical explosion sent all the chairs flying into the air. No Jung-gu looks on, shocked, wondering what that was. The assailant stares at the purple cloud, concerned about our agent's physical condition. Wielding his dagger, Lee Min-jun gives the assailant one final warning and demands that he release the hostage immediately. After being stunned by the agent's magic, The assailant asks how he recognized him so quickly, while the old lady smiles at the comment. He then replies that anyone could have recognized him easily. Suddenly, No Jung remembers something. He recalls that earlier he went to the government looking for help to get a job, and the old lady approached him saying something was on his clothes. The agent asks what happened after that. At that moment, the assailant notices extensions coming from his hands and connecting to the old lady's neck. He panics and screams, asking what that was. The assailant collapses, clutching his hand that's connected to the old woman. The old lady looks at him and says she bound him with a powerful charm but regrets that her spell was discovered. Minjun looks at her and lists all the serious crimes that had been committed by the creature. He then grips his dagger tightly in the palm of his hand and intentionally injures himself. He looks at his wounded hand and clenches his fingers. A viscous liquid drips from his hands and falls to the floor. Seeing what our agent was doing, the creature panics and asks what kind of strange energy that was. The creature decides to take action instead of just watching. She looks at the young assailant lying on the ground, still terrified, and launches sharp claws at him. The claws pierce directly into his skin. At that moment, the young man loses consciousness as the extensions connected to the claws begin to drain his vitality. The creature looks at the boy and feels all the life energy entering her body. She then turns to our agent and forms a powerful spell before him. The spell is cast in Yi Minjun's direction. That energy was so strong it managed to crack our friend's magical aura. The spell surged forward at full speed. Our agent raised his injured hand and easily contained the brutal energy coming his way. At that moment, Yi Minjun dispelled the magic with a few words. The liquid dripping from his hands fell to the ground, mixed with the remnants of the spell. The agent's wound began to heal. The creature looked on in shocked disbelief. The agent explained that that kind of spell could easily be undone because it had been cast incorrectly, and besides, it was illegal in that country. Even though he had handled all the chaos, Yi Minjun felt regretful, because he felt he had wasted years of his life dedicating himself to work, only to once again face just a petty criminal. The creature, shaped like a sweet old lady, watched our agent from the other side, and was shocked that our brave friend would waste years of his life to capture a nobody. He raised one of his hands, and a shadow formed above his head. Yi Minjun placed his hand in front of his face, and cast his shadow upon the creature. The shadow got so close that it stared her down in a terrifying way. The creature looked at the shadow and nearly wet herself in fear. Then the shadow grabbed both her arms and stretched them wide open in the shape of a cross. At that moment, the old lady let out such a loud scream that her eyes nearly popped out. The shadow tore off both her arms, dismantling her like a toy. Furious, the black cloud decided to finish dismantling the entire creature. It disassembled her part by part, and hurled what was left of her to the ground like it was nothing. She lay on the ground trying to understand how everything had happened so fast right before her eyes. Stunned, the creature said she had no idea Yi Minjun's shadow could be that powerful. At that moment, the shadow pinned her head against the ground. The agent looked down and said it must be awful to be defeated by someone you've despised your whole life, while she begged for a chance. She told the agent that if he let her live, she'd give him a great reward. Yi Minjun crouched and asked how he would be rewarded. She said there was a seer at the center of the universe who had seen a soul fragment scattered by the worst and most notorious criminal in history. A clue to find that soul was in her DNA. If he let her live, she could sell him that information and make him a millionaire. He looked and said the deal didn't seem worth it. So our agent lost his patience and began to finish what he had started. She looked at him with desperate eyes. The creature looked at her hands and asked if his injured hand was still working properly after the wound. She asked that because it should have been impossible for that life energy used in the spell to return to him. The creature stared at him in shock, eyes widening even more, and asked what race he was, because it didn't seem possible for him to be from a common race. Yi Minjun looked at her and said he had no idea what race he was either. With a single strike, our agent completely finished off the creature. He looked at the remains of the creature on the ground and wondered if it could still be breathing. Our friend stared silently at the remains on the floor for a few seconds and said he couldn't believe robbing banks in the cities was a crime worth forgiving. He looked at the creature on the ground and said he felt very jealous. It seemed the crime had been solved. The smoke began to fade, and things started returning to normal in the city. Yi Minjun walked calmly out of the bank while the police officers watched him. The lieutenant approached and asked if the whole problem had really been taken care of. The agent replied yes and said he'd leave the rest of the job to them. John Paul asked about the robber, and our friend answered that he was still breathing. The lieutenant joked that he really wouldn't want to be near a hurt young guy. Yi Minjun replied that the boy was more hurt than he thought. Our agent patted his shoulder and said that this kind of work isn't for weak people. He said goodbye and invited John Paul out for a drink someday. The lieutenant said he'd be happy to. While walking back home, His phone vibrated in his jacket pocket. He looked and saw on the phone screen that the payment for the job had just landed in his account. As he called a taxi, he smiled. This company really was good at paying on time. When he got in, the driver asked for his destination and he said he was going home to Gangnam. On the way back, he looked out the window and started to think and visualize his true identity. Lee Min-jun is actually a false human identity and he knows it. Our agent is, in fact, an alien working on planet Earth. He begins to recall the time he was imprisoned for committing a crime and was granted a pardon. However, his original memory and body were taken away. He remembers receiving 200 dalents in his account, and every time he completes a mission, he earns a certain amount of dalents. Lee Min-jun starts to realize that on planet Earth, problems are being solved by a former convict. After seeing the money in his account, he notices the tax deductions. On top of that, he sees that his bail costs 5 million dalents. At that moment, he really wishes he had 5 million in the account to free himself from that job. He immediately thinks he needs to find a quick way to make that money. Right away, he gets an idea, and he pulls up his information again. He starts reading the prisoner's manual to find out how to legally earn dalents through missions, and he gets frustrated because the first missions pay very little. He's not going to save up 5 million like that. He keeps looking through the list of things he can do legally. While Lee Min-jun continues reading the missions, he thinks he doesn't want to give up the cool lifestyle he's living, until he's shocked by a mission that offers a reward of 7 million dalents. The mission was none other than capture and deliver a soul fragment of the worst and most notorious criminal in history. The agent then remembers the deal that the creature at the bank wanted to make with him. At that moment, the agent is stunned by the opportunity he missed. The taxi driver comments that working is hard, but being unemployed is even worse. Lee Min-jun laughs and tells the driver he plans to retire soon. He thinks he never imagined he would work on Earth for 800 years. An assistant hands a paper to the boss at the office. A janitor hands a newspaper to a girl reading at the bookstore. A secretary stretches after finishing work in front of a computer. The police are chasing another robber through the city. Meanwhile, Lee Min-jun is certain he's going to leave that company. He will do whatever it takes to pay his bail. That day seemed like just another ordinary day in the city where our agent lives. He opens the door after another exhausting day at work. Upon entering, he notices someone is waiting for him. Sitting on the couch is Kathy, his secretary, asking why he's still using the same old phone. She tosses the newspaper she was reading onto the table and asks if he doesn't realize how annoying it is to talk and type at the same time. Catherine yells at him, annoyed, saying she's called him more than she's called her own mother. He glances at her phone and notes that she calls the bank more often than she calls him. Our agent looks at the table and notices something. He asks Catherine what it is, and she says it's something she picked up on the way. He looks at the box and sees kilos and kilos of potatoes. He asks Kathy why a lonely woman like her is buying so many potatoes. She says she's going to share the potatoes with a neighbor and leave some for Lee Min-jun. He says she doesn't need to spend money on him and asks the reason for her visit. Kate says it was at the request of the immigration department. They're still asking to keep him as an agent, but she doesn't know if he still wants to continue. She hands him a new case about a missing person. The missing person was a billionaire businessman who suddenly stopped going to work and disappeared without a trace. The immigration office needs more information about the race of the suspected alien. Lee Min-jun asks if the man has any heirs. Kathy replies that he has no family or heirs, and that seems highly suspicious. Our agent then understands that the office's goal is to capture him in order to claim his inheritance, since it can be transferred without any blood relation. He asks Kathy if that's the department's real intention. She confirms that it might be. Then he laughs and tells his secretary that it wouldn't be such a bad idea to take a bit of that money. Lee Min-jun says goodbye and asks her to close the door on her way out. She asks if he's going to start the job. She looks at him proudly, thinking of how he's a true model worker. Our agent steps outside and walks directly into a street that seems peaceful. On the sidewalk, he spots a goblin janitor sweeping the floor with a broom. Dong-chul looks at him. With a love-struck expression, the goblin says it's a pleasure to see his master. Lee Min-jun politely asks him not to call him master, but agent instead. The goblin says it's hard to pronounce other words. He then starts speaking several random and disconnected words. Our agent puts his hand on his forehead and takes a deep breath. He walks away from Dong-chul and says he'll find a better word than master later on. The agent enters a bookstore and is startled by something on the shelf. He sees a cactus and says he can't believe an elf managed to recover that. The elf, who was the bookstore clerk, yells at him, saying he should never buy a plant he can't take care of. Our agent says he didn't buy it. It was Kathy who gave it to him as a gift. Feeling awkward, he looks at the elf and says that even if he lets cacti die, at least the janitor has been doing a good job. They both look outside and see Dong-chul sweeping. He's sweeping the sidewalk barefoot but seems very content. The elf says the janitor really has been working hard. He looks at our agent and asks how he can help, sensing that he's not there just to chat. Lee Min-jun says he's looking for someone to ask for a favor. The elf says he can help with whatever he needs. Our agent says that in return for the favor, he'll lower the bookstore's rent. The bookstore clerk says he feels embarrassed by the offer. Looking forward, the elf summons his youthful spirit and asks if he can help them. At that moment, the agent recalls that when spirits are summoned, they take the form of the presence the summoner misses the most. He looks at the bookstore clerk and says he's been summoning his spirit faster each time. The elf says he's been focusing and practicing a lot. He then takes the paper with the billionaire's information and shows it to the spirit, asking if he can find that person. The spirit looks closely at the billionaire's facial features. Embarrassed, he puts both hands over his mouth and starts laughing. At that moment, he leaves the bookstore as a streak of golden light. Lee Min-jun thanks the clerk for the help. Everything seems calm and peaceful at the bookstore entrance. In an office room, someone knocks on the door repeatedly. The person sitting in the chair says they can come in. It's the janitor saying the master asked him to come down. Our agent returns to the bookstore, and his friend says he found the billionaire. He looks at the elf with the biggest smile in the world, saying he's the best. The clerk looks at him and asks what he's going to do after finding him. The agent says he's going to interrogate him and asks why he's asking that. The elf lowers his head and says it would be better to bring in more specialists on the case. He looks at the clerk and agrees that it might be best. Lee Min-jun's friend looks back at him and says he can only help him this far. The agent looks at the clerk and asks if the target is human. He responds that it's not possible to call that strange thing a human being. Our agent faces the target head-on. He opens his phone and calls Kathy. He says he found the billionaire but only found a letter in his pants pocket that looked like a will. Our friend says it seems they let that information slip by. Catherine says they already knew about it, and that a copy of the will is stored in the city vault where Changshin Bank is located. He says it might no longer be possible to get a second copy from the bank, and informs her that he's heading straight to the billionaire's house. The agent hangs up and says he's going to investigate a bit more to see if he really is an alien. Walking down the street, Lee Min-jun bumps straight into the police. The lieutenant asks what he's doing there. He's also surprised to see the police there. The person responsible for the mansion is very happy to see the police and the national agency together, since that way the case can be solved faster. He leaves and only asks that the keys be returned when they're done. Jean-Paul is completely confused while Lee Min-jun tries to make sense of the situation. The lieutenant says he doesn't need to understand, and that the police were probably dispatched to assist him. The lieutenant then decides to enter the mansion. Lee Min-jun follows him, and the two try to understand what happened in the disappearance case. The officer explains that a new team must have assigned them to the case after the disappearance of some elves. A new investigation network was created, and they were assigned this case, even though more important cases arise every day. Jean-Paul explains that the leader of the new team must know this case is different, which is why they were assigned to it. At that moment, the lieutenant's phone rings. It's the team leader. As soon as he answers, he puts it on speaker so Lee Min-jun can hear, and the leader simply asks the police to cooperate with the agent. The officer confirms he understood the command, and hangs up the phone. The agent tells Jean-Paul that if the job goes well, they'll split the profits. The lieutenant says there's no need to pay him, but he'll gladly accept a drink. The agent says they can at least earn enough for a nice evening out. At the billionaire's house, Lee Min-jun examines every detail. He observes the architecture and the beautiful furniture that only rich people have. Meanwhile, Jean-Paul decides to take a deeper look into the house's computer. He opens several files. The agent heads to the bedroom and decides to check out the closet. The lieutenant joins the agent and says he'll share the copied computer data with him tomorrow after analyzing it. Lee Min-jun thanks him. At that moment, the agent asks the officer to stay quiet because he hears noises coming from inside the wardrobe. Jean-Paul says the noise sounds like the resonance of an ego sword. They wonder if that strange sound could be a clue. The two leave the room because it seems the noise is coming from somewhere else. When they reach the kitchen, they realize the noise is actually coming from a frying pan. The officer picks up the frying pan and wonders why that sound is coming from it. At that moment, he feels something bad, and then he screams and throws the frying pan to the ground with all his strength. Lee Min-jun asks what that drama was about, and Jean-Paul says the frying pan sets something in his mind. The agent walks over to the frying pan and picks it up while the officer says he heard strange things coming from it. Our friend holds the frying pan in his hands and hears strange things. At that exact moment, the agent throws the frying pan to the floor again. The two of them just stare at it on the ground, completely confused. The agent gathers the courage to pick it up again. He holds the frying pan in front of his eyes and asks what it is. It thanks him for the kindness of asking. The frying pan replies that it is a kitchen tool with artificial intelligence, and then it jokingly teases him in a humorous way. The man stands still in the middle of the forest, completely frozen, as if stuck in time. The agent watches carefully and comments that it really seems to have been crafted with great care and realism. He states that the structure appears to have been made by someone small in stature and highly skilled. Using the registered DNA of billionaire Jan Tae-jun, A more thorough and meticulous investigation will be necessary. Lee Min-jun wonders why the criminal would act this way, suspecting that the billionaire might be an alien who created a fake body. Only the heirs would benefit financially from the mysterious disappearance of Jan Tae-jun, profiting from his absence. Meanwhile, the government suffers significant financial losses from not being able to access any part of the billionaire's fortune. The agent reflects that it would require extremely advanced technology to pull off something so complex and convincing. He thinks that maybe he should get more deeply involved in this case, given the growing complexity of the situation. Our agent then walks away from the forest, hoping to find a valuable clue at the house of the missing billionaire. The frying pan says it's excited because it had been alone for a long time, and now someone finally interacted with it. The agent thinks to himself that only alien beings would give so much importance to an eye inside a kitchen. The pan starts to explain that it is not an ordinary frying pan, but a far more advanced device. It has ultra-thin vibration, allowing one to create culinary masterpieces just by holding the handle firmly. In addition to cooking, it detects and records objects within a 3-meter radius and even offers shopping tips. The most impressive feature is its ability to understand and interpret any language through telepathy, without needing contact. The agent asks if the billionaire used it often, and it responds affirmatively, saying yes. Lee Min-jun says he needs to ask some important questions, and it agrees, but makes a request first. He looks at it curiously, and says it can ask for anything, as long as it's reasonable and useful. The frying pan asks if they could throw it to the ground a few more times, as it enjoyed the sensation. Outside, everything appears normal, with no signs of suspicious activity around. The frying pan reports that, from the beginning, the billionaire seemed to be just an ordinary human with no mystery. The agent then asks when was the last time she had contact with Jan Tae-jun. She replies that she saw him a week ago, around 2 in the morning, acting like a sleepwalker. The next day, she felt a strange presence in the living room, but thought it wasn't anything important. Our friend looks at the frying pan, surprised by the information, realizing that something very strange is going on. He asks the lieutenant if anyone entered the house that week, but he states that no one had been there. The frying pan then insists that the person who came in was absolutely not the real Jan Tae-jun. She adds that this strange figure comes in daily, rummages through everything, and disappears at dawn, but stopped in the last 2 days. The agent asks if she managed to see the person's face, but she explains that she doesn't have night vision. The lieutenant questions what the frying pan is saying, while the agent thinks about magic and alien teleportation. While talking to the frying pan, the agent is absolutely sure that someone had been there before them. He starts looking for magical traces around him, using his glowing eyes to detect hidden spiritual signals. Jean-Paul watches, concerned, and asks the agent what exactly he's doing during that strange moment. He explains that he needs to identify spiritual traces in the house to find clues about the possible supernatural intruder. Lee Min-jun walks to the living room with the frying pan in his hands and the police officer following. He looks ahead with a slight smile, feeling that he has just found something important and promising. Our agent examines the room and identifies 10 teleportation holes scattered across different spots in the environment. He turns to the lieutenant and says they should follow that lead, which may take them to the suspect. The officer asks what they will do with the frying pan, and the agent says it's his only concrete evidence. He stares at the frying pan, thinking how insane it is that his main investigative resource is a talking pan. In the street, the agent and the lieutenant prepare to continue the investigation with seriousness and focus. They activate the police car alarm and head toward the city, staying alert to their surroundings. They agree not to bother the frying pan with unnecessary questions during the drive to the next location. Jean-Paul asks if any mage would be able to see what the agent saw, and he replies that he has a lot of experience. Inside the car, Lee Min-jun asks the officer to turn right at the next corner, staying sharp. He asks the lieutenant if he's really thinking about retiring soon, and the orc confirms with seriousness. The agent comments that the lieutenant is still too young to be thinking about retirement at this point. He asks if the orc would like to work with him at his office after leaving the police. The police car turns right, following the new path indicated by the agent. Jean-Paul says that maybe he doesn't want to work anymore, reflecting on his life after retirement. They arrive in the city as the agent tries to convince the officer to accept his job offer. The lieutenant says he's worried about how his mother would react knowing he'd be working with aliens. While stopped at a red light, they hear a truck passing by with a human rights protest. The agent rolls down the window to hear better what the sound truck is saying. They hear the frying pan whispering something from the back seat, as if it wanted to comment on the situation. Lee Min-jun asks to turn on the radio, and the officer allows it, saying he can do it himself. After turning it on, he tunes to a news station, looking for any information that might be useful. The car drives through different neighborhoods, each with its own atmosphere and peculiar residents. With his supernatural eyes, the agent clearly sees a ghost sitting on the roof of a nearby building. He asks the lieutenant to stop the car immediately to investigate what he just saw. The agent observes the street carefully and says there are 10 spiritual traces marking paths in that place. The police chief gets out of the car and analyzes the surroundings, noticing the presence of an orc gang. He believes they've entered an orc community, and the agent agrees, saying the ghost passed through there 5 days in a row. Lee Min-jun spots a portal at the top of a building, probably used by the intruder to move around. The agent asks the officer to check the security cameras to find out the intruder's route. Jean-Paul accepts the task and begins searching for clues on the cameras in the area. The two walk through the orc community, looking for cameras that might have recorded something relevant. Our friend is surprised to realize there are no security cameras installed in that neighborhood. The lieutenant explains that it's very rare to find cameras in orc communities due to cultural and economic reasons. While eating a local sweet, they conclude they'll have to resort to the traditional method of investigation without technology. Lee Min-jun is clearly irritated by this unexpected and frustrating situation. He comments indignantly that it's absurd to need manual labor to catch a criminal in the 21st century. In the neighborhood, there was an orc pub with a large green tent at the entrance. Jean-Paul and the agent enter the pub, and the bartender asks what they're doing there and whether they've been reported again. Lee Min-jun turns to the lieutenant and says he seems to be well known in the place. The officer asks the bartender if he knows anyone who recently moved into the neighborhood. He takes out a photo and shows it to the bartender, saying the person they're looking for likes to walk around at night. The bartender grabs the photo for a closer look. He takes the photo to a back room behind the bar and says he's going to check more thoroughly by making a few calls. Jean-Paul turns to the agent and says he can trust the bartender's answer because he knows everything that happens there. They wait anxiously while the bartender makes his calls. The bartender returns saying that no one resembling the person in the photo was in that neighborhood, but that someone similar had been seen in a nearby district. Lee Min-jun is surprised at how quickly the bartender got that information. The two go to the next neighborhood, and there they find someone. Jean-Paul asks if he's seen anyone resembling the person in the photo nearby. He responds by saying people usually don't go out at night in the city due to lack of safety. The officer replies that criminals tend to go out at night, and it would be impossible for no one to have seen anything. At that moment, the lieutenant is startled to see the bright, supernatural eyes of Lee Min-jun, intrigued. He has a clear vision, using his supernaturally powered eyes, that reveals something important to them. The agent says he's seeing an apartment where it looks like someone just teleported inside. They need to go to that place immediately, because something urgent is happening in that suspicious apartment he saw. Arriving at the suspect's entrance, our friend notices several mysterious barriers blocking the access door. Lee Min-jun takes his magic dagger and announces that he's going to remove the barriers one by one carefully. He begins to cut the barriers, one by one, with his magical dagger, unhurried and focused. He makes each cut slowly, not rushing, until he finally begins to remove the last remaining barriers. Then he asks the lieutenant to position himself behind him, because the suspect might try to escape at any moment. The agent prepares to enter and summons his shadow to accompany him, protecting him during the operation. The mage's shadow grips the door tightly with its hand, preventing it from moving easily. It pushes the door backward with all the mage's strength, opening the way for them to enter. Upon entering, the agent is met with a strong golden flash that lights up the entire interior. Suddenly, everything around them explodes violently, and debris flies through the air with great intensity. When the smoke from the explosion clears, a shield is revealed, created by Lee Min-jun using his shadow. His shadow steps aside, allowing him to clearly see what was inside the protected area. He sees a young man in black shorts, standing with a portal open right in front of him, ready to escape. The young man looks embarrassed, realizing he's been discovered, but maintains his posture, trying to intimidate the agents. He places an arm inside the portal and asks if they really think they can capture him so easily. The agent firmly extends his hand, preparing to catch the fleeing enemy. Meanwhile, the young man boldly jumps and dives straight into the open magical portal. Just when he thinks he's going to escape, the agent grabs his foot with surprising strength, stopping his getaway. Then he hurls the young man violently against the outer wall, throwing him away from the magic portal. The impact is so brutal that it creates a hole in the wall, and Lee Min-jun tries to restrain him with magic. The young man falls on his back to the ground, completely immobilized, held firmly by the powerful magic conjured by the agent. The agent observes the scene with a satisfied smile, clearly proud of the result of what he just did. They take the young suspect to a secluded location, where they intend to interrogate him with total privacy and discretion. Jean-Paul closely observes the young man's body and notices an unusual tattoo drawn on his skin. The boy has gang initials tattooed, and the lieutenant confirms he belongs to a criminal society. The officer then picks up a heavy hammer and raises it above his head with a determined expression on his face. Lee Min-jun asks why he's holding a hammer, and the lieutenant replies that he prefers to interrogate that way. The agent shows his dagger to the officer, saying it's far more effective than a simple hammer. He plunges the dagger into his own hand, causing a deep wound, intentional and filled with a hidden purpose. As the wound darkens quickly, the agent begins murmuring magical words in a threatening and ominous tone. A strange bubble begins to form at the center of the agent's injured finger, visibly swelling with each second. The young man watches everything in terror and, unable to hide his fear, calls the agent a complete lunatic. Our agent asks if he knows what's going on, hinting that he might not be an ordinary human. Lee Min-jun observes it and responds with contempt, directly and coldly calling the agent an idiot. The young man then just lowers his head in silence, clearly shaken by the situation in front of him. Suddenly, the bubble on the agent's finger bursts with a pop, releasing a giant, bizarre fly. He brings his hand close to the young man's face, making a point of showing him the finger and the creature that came out of it. The young man stares in horror at the enormous fly that just emerged from the mysterious agent's body. He looks around in desperation, not knowing what to do in such a completely surreal situation. Then he takes the deepest breath he can, trying to control the panic that completely overtakes him. At that moment, the fly looks at the young man's nose and dives into his nostril as his eyes go wide. The agent asks Jean-Paul to quickly turn on the voice recorder. The young man begins trembling in pain in the chair as the lieutenant hands the recorder to the agent. He starts shaking and foaming at the mouth as a purple bubble forms on his forehead. The fly in the suspect's forehead starts moving and getting larger. Lee Min-jun turns on his phone camera. While looking at the phone screen, he begins saying some magical words. At that moment, the young man lets out a terrifying scream of pain. Jean-Paul is startled and asks what that thing is. The agent responds by saying it's just a happy insect. That insect is also known as a morphine larva because it stimulates the brain to feel the greatest possible happiness. He tells the lieutenant that he recorded that spell on the phone and that he can watch it as many times as he wants. Lee Min-jun and the officer sit on the floor while the criminal is still in a trance. At that moment, the only sound is the water dripping in the sink, until the young man awakens and starts screaming desperately while still tied to the chair. He begs them to let him go back into the trance because he doesn't like this place. The agent stands up and says if he wants to go back, he'll have to cooperate with them. He says that if he helps, he'll let him return to the trance again. The young man says he doesn't know where the billionaire is, he was just hired to find the secret vault inside the house. Lee Min-jun is confused because he didn't know there was a secret vault in the house. He then asks the young man who hired him for the job. He says he doesn't know the name of the person who hired him, only that. While listening to him speak, the agent gets alarmed. Jean-Paul grabs him by the hair and says he's talking too much nonsense for someone in that situation. He looks at the agent and asks what he wants to do with this information. Lee Min-jun stays silent. He yells at the agent, saying it's dangerous to continue the investigation after what the kid just revealed to them. Our friend looks at the ground and says that now the problem just got truly serious, because the dragon that hired the young man was worse than they had imagined. The two look at the young criminal sitting in the chair, wondering what they should do. Lee Min-jun thinks about the dragon who hired the boy. He begins to imagine that people who mess with dragons tend to disappear soon afterward. There are almost no places in the world a dragon's breath can't reach. They have so much influence and so many resources they can dominate an entire society. The agent says he needs to ask the boy a few more things. Meanwhile, he records the entire conversation on his phone. Outside, the police car waits for them, and a few more patrol cars arrive at the scene. The officers take the boy to the station while the agent hands over a recording of the spell for the police to use in case he refuses to cooperate. Jean-Paul wonders if sending him to jail is really the best decision, and the agent replies that it is. On the way to the station, Lee Min-jun says he's lucky to be alive, since most don't survive. But of course, at this moment he's only alive, even though he keeps begging to go back into the trance. Because the magic wasn't cast by an ordinary sorcerer, the police car drives through the city with its siren on. Inside the car, the local radio reports the news of the day. Jean-Paul and Lee Min-jun continue on their way while listening to the news. The agent looks out the window, thinking that maybe it wasn't a dragon who set this up. He starts imagining 4 possible candidates and wonders which of them could have done it. The radio begins broadcasting news about the stock market. It says that the company Hyosung purchased shares totaling 15% of the total value, setting a new record for market capitalization. The agent and the officer are shocked by the news, since Hyosung is the company owned by the missing billionaire. Lee Min-jun asks Jean-Paul if it's normal for companies to do that without the CEO being around. The officer and the agent grow thoughtful, until our friend says he's hungry and casts a spell to make food appear. He asks the officer if he wants some. The lieutenant asks what that was, and Yi Min-jun replies it's a sandwich made by Kathy. It was already late at night inside the station, and everyone was still absorbed in their tasks and thoughts. Yi Min-jun spreads the investigation documents across the table to try and organize the gathered information. He mentally recalls everything they saw and noticed at Jang Tae-jun's house, analyzing the details. He remembers having thoroughly investigated every corner of that mansion, looking for important clues. The agent reads carefully through all the documents they gathered during the investigation, hoping to find something new. Until, tired, he decides to give up on the investigation, thinking that if a dragon is involved, it's not worth pursuing. Kathy arrives and sees the two talking, interrupting the agent's concentration on their discussion. Jongpal asks Kathy why she calls only Yi Min-jun sir and not him. She replies that he keeps getting into trouble over nonsense and doesn't deserve that kind of respect. She then asks why there's a frying pan oddly placed on the police station table. Catherine bends down to pick up the frying pan and complains that they had a snack without her. The agent warns her that she might regret touching that frying pan, which seems to be special. Kathy is startled, not understanding what the agent means about the dangers of the frying pan. When she looks more closely, Kathy is surprised to realize that the frying pan seems intelligent and talkative. The frying pan says it's a pleasure to meet her and asks her to hold it firmly. She's shocked and impressed to learn that Yi Min-jun bought such a different and special frying pan. The two begin chatting cheerfully and spend a good amount of time interacting in that strange situation. The agent warns that if Kathy is thinking of taking the frying pan home, she should drop that idea. Kathy asks why they seem so down at that moment, worried about the two's mood. She says she brought something nice for them in her bag, hoping to cheer them up a bit. Yi Min-jun's secretary comments that she's been feeling a strong urge to drink something lately. Jongpal says he's not going to drink anything because he's driving, and the agent also prefers not to drink. Kathy opens the sack in her bag, showing them a mysterious old bottle. She pulls out a purple bottle of liquor, aged no less than 37 years, a rare luxury. At that moment, the two agents change their minds and decide to grab cups and ice from the fridge to drink. The three set up an improvised table with drinks and snacks to enjoy the night together at the station. The agent takes a sip of the drink and immediately feels his body relax, letting the fatigue slip away. Jongpal also can't resist the flavor and drinks a glass, relaxing after so much work. Morning arrives at the station, and by then there's no drink or snack left on the table. Yi Min-jun wakes up with a strong hangover, a terrible headache, and regret for drinking. He starts imagining past scenes when he was forced to drink too much in traumatic situations. Our agent doesn't seem to have many good memories linked to drinking in moments of intoxication. Yi Min-jun starts feeling his body floating through space, as if dreaming or disoriented, until someone knocks on the door, waking him up and abruptly breaking his semi-conscious state. He gets up still drowsy and walks slowly to open the office door. Dongchul is outside and says he has something important to tell Yi Min-jun. He's holding a newspaper in his hands, wanting to deliver or show something that might be relevant to the case. The agent tells the janitor he doesn't need to bring the newspaper every day. He'll pick it up when he can. Dongchul looks firmly at Yi Min-jun and replies that he does it because he wants to and believes it's important. Inside the room, there are papers and letters scattered all over the table, showing the mess of the investigation. Our friend starts reading some of those papers to try to find clues or important new information. Among the documents, he sees a letter from the Secretary-President requesting a discussion about confidential matters. Something strange and mysterious seems to be happening, and they need to understand better what's going on. The taxi stops on the street out front, and the agent opens the door to step out onto the sidewalk. He looks up and sees that the building is enormous, thinking the subject must be related to something he and Jongpal discovered. The receptionist says they were expecting him. She leads Yi Min-jun through the corridors to the correct room. They stop in front of a large door that looked important. The agent opens one of the doors. He looks inside through the gap as he opens it. Inside, a woman says she had been anxiously waiting for him. The woman was an elf, very well dressed, and waiting alone for his arrival. She stares at Yi Min-jun while giving a wicked little smile. In the kitchen, the agent is preparing some meat. Meanwhile, Kathy is brushing her teeth. She asks Yi Min-jun if he could use something different to cut the meat, since he seems to like cutting everything with his dagger. The secretary said he's already mentioned that the dagger was used in various ancient rituals. The agent says he's very fond of the tool. Kathy just nods, saying she believes in his attachment to the object, while Jongpal watches TV. Yi Min-jun asks the lieutenant when he plans to return to the station. He replies that he's going back today to report that they're dropping the case. The officer watches the news on TV. Some news airs about an elf named Areta Serapi, who launched a perfume with the scent of elves. Our agent jokes that he wouldn't buy that perfume. Kathy says she really doesn't smell anything on Yi Min-jun, but she says it's strange not to smell anything at all, since our agent is a half-blood. Then our friend, while preparing the food, responds that half-bloods really don't have any scent. In that tall building located in the city center, The elegant elf says it's been some time since she last saw our agent up close. He replies that yes, while thinking he never wanted to see her again. His acquaintance says the CEO of her company is very interested in the case he's working on. She continues saying they were surprised by the last suspect he captured. The elf stands in front of Yi Minjun and asks who he thinks the dragon behind all this chaos is. She also says they have 3 suspects he might want to consider. The agent replies that he also has 3 suspects but doesn't understand the CEO's interest in this story. She opens a presentation and asks if he has any idea what kind of company the billionaire owns. The elf informs Yi Minjun that Jang Taejun's company is involved in secret research. Our friend replies to her saying there's nothing wrong with having a secret project. She looks at him and says the problem is the target of their research. They're researching dragon DNA. Dragons don't get sick, heal themselves from injuries, and have no genetic diseases. Because of that, there's no need to develop medicine for dragons or conduct genetic studies. Surely Jang Taejun's company does not have authorization for this research. A dragon would be furious if they found out. Yi Minjun says it wouldn't make sense for a dragon to join criminal gangs just for revenge. However, knowing all this information, the agent asks the elf if she thinks the billionaire could be an alien. She immediately grabs the remote and says that everything seems very suspicious since he appeared out of nowhere and built a valuable company all by himself. Yi Minjun remembers the day Kathy said that the CEO of Hyo-sung was suspected of being an illegal alien immigrant. With that, our friend thinks that maybe the goal of the government and the immigration department is to take over the secret research or destroy it completely. The elf continues talking to the agent, saying that she was also instructed to provide information to help with the investigation and hands him a remote control. He asks what it is, and she tells him to just watch. The agent presses the button, and a profile with information appears in front of him. The profile is of Kim Yeonju, administrative director of Hyo-sung. It seems she attempted a power grab against the billionaire. Yi Minjun asks the elf if she suspects the director. She says the CEO was the only person above her. It would be very tempting not to leak information to the dragon so she could take control of the company. The elf tells the agent that it would be a very sophisticated crime to set up an ambush and make her superior disappear. The agent pauses and thinks this job is going to be really annoying with dragons on his back. He thinks it's better to find a way to reject the assignment and look for another one that pays better. Before he can refuse, she asks the agent to check the message that was sent to him. Yi Minjun picks up the remote control and opens the message sent by his boss. In the message, the boss says he doesn't need to worry about the repercussions because he'll take care of everything. The agent gets upset because now he's forced to take the mission. The police car moves calmly through traffic, while Jeonpal and Yi Minjun listen to the whispers of the frying pan in the back seat. The two arrive at the Hyo-sung company. Inside, they wait to be seen while sipping some juice. A hand opens the door. Entering the room is the director, apologizing for the delay. Her name is Kim Yeonju, administrative director of Hyo-sung. Yi Minjun smells her scent from a distance. He recognizes that smell. It seems oddly familiar. She says she's already clarified many things to other officers, and they ask to make a few more inquiries. Yi Minjun asks if there was anything different about the CEO before he disappeared. She replies that she's not sure as she doesn't discuss personal matters with her boss. Jeonpal asks to pose one more question. She looks completely uninterested in the topic. The agent looks directly at the director and analyzes her movements. This director seemed very suspicious. She asks if they're done with so many questions because she's very busy. Yi Minjun then says that someone else in the company reported the disappearance and asks the director why she was against it. She says she believes he'll return soon. The agent stays silent for a moment, thinking over her answer. He calls her and says that he has a very special ability to sense specific scents, and asks if she's emitting the pheromone scent of unidentified individuals. Yi Minjun uses his magical eye to see more clearly who this woman really is. The scan reveals that this scent is characteristic of alien species. Director Kim Yeonju is wanted, and her bounty is 50,000 talents. The agent looks at the director and asks how long she's been close friends with dragons. Yi Minjun says that regular contact with corresponding species is required for someone like her to appear. The director gets nervous on the other side of the table. The agent recalls that the elf said her boss had 3 suspicious dragons. Among the 3, the only dragon who could have connections with the director was just one. Our agent looks at Kim Yeonju and asks how long she's known the dragon Adelines. In the parking lot, our agent and the lieutenant talk inside the car. They discuss how the director's behavior seemed very strange. Jeonpal asks the agent how he knew which dragon was the right one, just as the frying pan begins to vibrate violently in the back seat. Lee Min-jun completely loses his patience and almost throws the intelligent object straight out the window. The frying pan, with a serious voice, says it needs to tell them something very important at that moment. She explains to the agent that they were talking about someone she personally knows very well. The agent is visibly shocked when she says she knows Kim Yeon-ju, the director. He looks at the smart little pan and asks exactly how she knows director Kim Yeon-ju. The frying pan reports that Kim Yeon-ju frequently visits the house of the missing billionaire in the city. Inside the car, the frying pan starts to vibrate and emit an intense blue light across its entire surface. The smart object begins playing a sound that seems like a recorded conversation. It seems someone bugged the director while she was being interrogated by the two agents at the scene. At that moment, she begins transmitting the director's conversation to the agent and the lieutenant in the car. Kim Yeon-ju is talking in the bathroom, asking over the phone if they found a specific person yet. Angrily, she says the person on the other end should hurry and find their target. She complains, questioning what kind of dragon can't even summon a spirit. The director calls him ridiculous. She complains that she's been working twice as hard to handle everything on her own. The two are left stunned by the director's conversation they're listening to. She says the company has already captured several elves so far in the search for Jang Tae-jun. Kim Yeon-ju says their spiritual skills on this mission seem pathetic. Our agent listens carefully as she says she captured an elf who gave some interesting information. The director hears that there seems to be a very powerful spirit living in hiding. A woman speaking to her from the other side says she came to capture that spirit. Everything seems calm outside the store. When the woman enters, she is cheerfully greeted by the goblin janitor. Lee Min-jun recognizes Don Chul's voice from the other side. John Pal says they should go there immediately, but our friend refuses. The agent says there's too much traffic in Seoul, and by the time they got there, everything would already be over. The lieutenant asks Lee Min-jun to listen carefully to the audio. At that moment, he injures his hand beside the officer. He yells, asking what the agent is doing. Lee Min-jun says he's casting a distortion spell. He tells the lieutenant he doesn't need to follow him and asks him to go to Hyo-sung Company instead. The agent asks John Paul to arrest the director and to keep her locked up because they might need to use her as a hostage. The officer is startled and asks who they would need to threaten in order to use her as a hostage. Our friend tells him not to worry. A woman arrives at the elf's library. She looks directly at the clerk, Lee Min-jun's friend. He looks back at her, calmly sitting with his legs crossed. The woman asks him to remove his spirit for a moment. The elf says his spirit is like his shadow. He says he would never remove his spirit in front of a stranger. The woman loses her patience and throws a file in front of him. She demands that he locate Jang Tae-jun as quickly as possible. The elf asks if, by chance, her ears were dirty. She gets angry and lets out a dragon's roar, asking who he thinks he is. Outside, everyone hears the dragon's roar and becomes dizzy. The elf hears the roar and is mentally and physically shaken. Don Chul panics. The goblin remembers some advice given by the agent. Lee Min-jun told him he should take action when problematic customers show up in the store. He runs up the stairs and grabs a book from the shelf. Very nervously, he pulls the book down. Meanwhile, the woman grabs the elf's arm and tries to hurt him. Until that moment, she looks back and sees a strong golden light. The elf looks at the bright light, frightened. He remembers that it was something made by Lee Min-jun. It begins to emit a golden glow around the cactus the agent had left in the store. At that moment, a shield of energy appears around the elf, pushing the woman away. The woman is thrown out of the store by the glowing shield as it expands. A small explosion occurs outside, and the woman is launched against the iron fence of the park. She is furious about what happened. She tries to blow up the shining shield with her hands. She returns to the store entrance and shouts from outside while being blocked by the shield. The entire library is protected by the golden energy shield. Outside, the crowd gathers while trying to call the police about the woman. People on the street begin to smell a strange substance. They look up and ask what that is. Lee Min-jun begins to materialize in that place. Our hero appears flying, dagger in hand. At the top of the library, he looks down and sees everything happening. The woman looks and asks if he's the owner of the library. The agent looks back without saying a word. She yells, asking if he's not listening to what she's saying. Lee Min-jun takes a deep breath and asks if that woman is some kind of lunatic. At the top of the library, our agent watches everything from above. The woman looks up, not understanding what he said. Min-jun starts to say that he knows the woman is actually a dragon. He says that Adelines is on Earth as an illegal immigrant because she caused chaos in her native dimension. She looks up and says he's talking nonsense. The agent says he's not surprised she doesn't know anything about him because he escaped from a dragon conference. The woman then starts trembling and screaming, calling the agent a bastard. The ground of the city begins to shake, and people panic while our friend seems protected on the store's roof. He looks at the street and watches the woman scream nonstop. Lee Min-jun asks if she's really going to return to her dragon form right there, since the older dragons might be upset with the mess she's caused in the city. She notices that everyone around is watching what's happening. The agent calls the girl aside and asks her to follow him. He flies over the golden shield. She glares angrily and says our agent will bitterly regret this. The woman takes flight, chasing Yi Min-jun through the sky. The sun begins to set on the horizon. The agent stops in a forest, and the woman lands shortly after. Min-jun mocks her, saying the dragon really was afraid of elders, so afraid that she followed him quietly all the way to the forest. The woman begins to transform and says she'll tear the agent to pieces. At that moment, the woman transforms completely. An explosion erupts in the middle of the forest. A cave opens up in the rock. Lee Min-jun says it's been a long time since he fought a dragon. A black shadow emerges from inside the cave. High in the sky, the dragon Adelines appears, roaring as she glares at our friend. The agent says his left hand's regeneration is far too slow. It's like that because the last spell was too powerful. He decides to rip that arm off with his dagger since it's now useless. The arm flies through the air. Right after that, the shadow descends upon him. Adeline says he's insane for tearing off his own arm just to use dark magic. Suddenly, Yi Min-jun's shadow disappears and starts spreading through his entire body. Some of the shadow leaks from his mouth, and the arm regenerates, replaced by the shadow's arm. The agent charges toward Adeline and lands a powerful strike to her jaw. The dragon is left dizzy from the force of the blow. Adeline wonders how a human could have such strength and decides to go all out against him. The dragon positions herself right in front of Yi Min-jun and prepares to blow. He asks if she wants to start a forest fire. As he strikes her jaw again, this time with one of his feet, he uses Adeline's head to gain momentum and makes a huge leap straight into the sky. The dragon crashes to the ground and is knocked out for a few seconds. From above, the agent says that hit was right on target. He struck one of Adeline's 6 brains. That part is responsible for reflexes and balance, and besides, he aimed there because, from above, he casts a spell that pierces deep into Adeline's tail. The dragon panics and goes into a frenzy. She roars in agony, shaking her tail wildly from side to side. Yi Min-jun drops down to the forest floor and finds the dragon Adelines completely numb. He says it's time to end this once and for all. The agent plunges his dagger into her back, inflicting a wound that will leave the dragon's body permanently paralyzed. Adelines remains lying still, feeling the precision of that blow. The agent withdraws his shadow from the creature's back. At that moment, the dragon starts begging for her life. Min-jun watches the beast lying there, pleading for mercy. He pulls out his dagger and says that dragon has no sense whatsoever. With his body possessed and dagger raised, the agent asks how Adelines dares to trespass in his territory, and lunges with his dagger. From deep in the forest, someone yells for Yi Min-jun not to strike. He looks around, trying to see who said that. It was a telepathic voice. He looks at the full moon, trying to figure out where it came from. Somewhere, someone begs him to stop immediately. A man observes his actions against the dragon. Yi Min-jun replies that he can't stop anymore. At the entrance of the luxurious building in the city center, President Jenkinson watches the agent's actions from his office. The agent yells at the full moon, saying Adelines invaded his territory without permission. Jenkinson says he knows what this means to the agent. Our friend says it's something of his kind, something that screams through his body, and he has no choice but to finish what he started. The president says if the agent continues, it could have serious consequences. Yi Min-jun must respect the Dragon Conduct Code. The agent says he knows the rules, but this is a personal matter. President Jenkinson pleads with him to consider his request as a personal friend. Our friend says just asking nicely isn't enough. The president asks what he'd rather do instead of getting revenge. He says he's going to take a bit of Adeline's vital fluid. Min-jun looks at the dragon and says it won't hurt at all. Jenkinson agrees and informs that he'll send a cleanup team over there. Shortly after, our agent is sitting on top of Adelines. When the cleanup team arrives to deal with the mess, parts of a dragon are very valuable on the market. That's why the cleanup team makes sure everything is properly cleared. The agent looks at the tube of fresh vital fluid he extracted from the dragon. He accesses his bank information and sees that 10,000 delants were deposited into his account. His current balance is 31,523 delants. Yi Min-jun is happy because he earned a lot of delants from this case. The agent opens his phone and calls to speak with his friend Jong-paul. The lieutenant asks what should be done about the director tied to the chair. Our hero asks where he is with the director because he wants to finish this story once and for all. In an abandoned warehouse, the agent looks at the director, but she turns her face away from him. Min-jun informs Kim Yeonju that Adelines has been captured. He says they seem very close and asks how long they've known each other. The director starts stammering and says it was all just a misunderstanding. Kim Yeonju says the recording they made is illegal. The agent says he'll make her confess. He raises one of his hands and a bubble appears. A fly emerges at the tip of his finger. She looks at it in despair. Lee Minjun says she can choose to talk the easy way or the hard way. 10 minutes later, the friends start recording Kim Myeonju's confession. She begins to say everything she knows about the effect of the fly on her forehead. The things she reveals leave our agent in shock. The director and Adelines were more than just friends. The billionaire Jang Tae-jun was the first to discover everything. He requested a sample of the director's vital fluid for a research project. His research was about the effect of dragon scent on pheromone emission. For the study, he had to test both materials. That means Adeline's blood was used, as well as Kim's. But how did they manage to get so much dragon fluid? Lee Minjun is shocked. He looks at his friend John Paul and asks, how many properties does the billionaire own besides the ones they visited? The taxi speeds down the road. Inside, the friends talk about Jang Tae-jun's properties. The agent looks out the window, then picks up his phone and starts dialing some numbers. The office phone rings. On the other end, the elf secretary of President Jenkinson answers. Minjun asks to urgently speak with the president. The elf smudges her nail when the agent says the matter is about an illegal immigrant as old as the president himself. The taxi drives along the beaches of Seoul. At that moment, a black car approaches and appears to be following Jeonpal and Lee Minjun's taxi. They get out of the car. President Jenkinson says they could have come together. The agent and the president look ahead. They walk toward the dock. After that, they disappear. Because the billionaire vanished while researching dragons, because he used a homunculus to fake his disappearance. The president and the agent look at a fisherman on the dock. It seems that Jang Tae-jun completed his research using his own fluid. Lee Min-jun calls out to the fisherman and asks why he was behind all of it. The billionaire is discovered. He turns to the president and the agent and says they weren't the clients he was expecting. That night in the city of Seoul, the director seems to have trouble sleeping. She looks at the ceiling of her room and imagines that after confessing everything she knew, she will have to leave. She looks to the side, and Jang Tae-jun says she should go somewhere far away. While lighting a cigarette, he says she should meet someone else. Kim asks how he has the nerve to say that, since they've known each other for 10 years. She desperately asks where he's going and when, and why all the secrecy. He doesn't say anything while she cries. Kim tells Jang that she went to the doctor and he said she's a pheromone emitter. The billionaire looks at her and asks a favor. He would like to take a sample of her vital fluid. Very reluctantly, she allows him to take a sample. The director would do anything to keep their relationship going. A bottle of wine shatters on the floor. Kim Yeonju says that Jang Tae-jun is insane for selling all the company shares, including her own, for a social cause. She cries, saying they built the company together. As she tries to explain, she walks away, wandering through the city in tears. Kim says she felt completely used by Jang as she sips a glass of wine. Talking at a bar, her friend asks if she wants revenge. Adeline says that if the director needs it, she can help. She looks at her friend and accepts the help. The president tells the fisherman that the immigration agent discovered the entire lie he told. Jang Tae-jun has been found out. It's not the first time someone has tried to obtain the indestructible body of a dragon. He used Kim's body to get what he wanted, because it could only be done through a pheromone emitter. He created the perfect dragon fluid. After that, the man didn't stop researching the fluid in various ways. They tell Jang that what he really wanted was to create a virus capable of infecting only dragons. The president says he committed a very serious crime and must come with them. The billionaire asks if they think he's crazy. Minjun says he wouldn't be insane enough to exterminate the dragon race, since he's one too. But at that moment, Jang Tae-jun confesses that he loathes dragons. He steps forward and says he's been studying for a long time, but finally found an answer. Dragons are parasites that disrupt all dimensions. They shouldn't exist. The agent looks at Jang, thinking he's heard that same talk before. A lot of people like to protest for the environment, and many activists say the only way to save the earth is to eliminate humans. But in the end, no one does anything, yet it seems the billionaire fisherman plans to back. Jang Tae-jun continues, saying that dragons control everything in the palm of their hands. Other species are like paints that mix together, but dragons don't mix with anyone. They're like oil. Jang asks the president if he doesn't agree with his thinking. Jenkinson says what he's saying is pure madness. Our agent Lee Min-jun draws his dagger. As he injures his hand, he asks if Jang has citizenship to stay on Earth. If he doesn't have a citizenship document, he'll need to present a legal residency permit. He looks and says the documents should be shown immediately. Jang replies that he has neither. At that moment, the agent creates a shield with the fluid from his hand while chanting a spell. The shield expands across the pier and the whole beach. Lee Min-jun looks at the president. Jenkinson turns to the billionaire and asks who else he was expecting there. It would be impossible to do all that alone, so he asks who the accomplice is. Jang looks at both of them without answering. The president loses his patience. At that moment, the weather turns and thunder rumbles. A bolt of lightning falls from the sky, and a red fireball hits the pier. Jang Tae-jun looks up as rain begins to fall. A massive tornado forms from the sky down to the sea. A mouth with the characteristic teeth of a dragon emerges. and then a huge red dragon appears in front of Jang. He looks down and says he'll take him since he refuses to answer. With one claw, he presses a golden portal, and then seizes Jang Taejun by the arms. The red dragon levitates and lifts the billionaire high into the sky. He glares at the man and says he'll give him one last chance to surrender. Jang looks up and says dragons truly are despicable. A bright golden light appears in the sky as a fisherman's hat flies through the air. The tornado becomes a massive hurricane, and then another dragon appears, surrounded by rain and wind. He lets out a fierce, deafening roar, his eyes glowing like balls of fire. The red dragon looks and says this is ridiculous. Lee Min-jun, excited, says it's been a long time since he fought alongside a dragon. Proudly, he says he managed to hunt 2 dragons in a single day. The 3 of them position themselves in the sky for an epic battle. The agent charges forward, dagger in hand, and a blinding flash of enormous magnitude bursts forth. Rain pours down over the city. The director watches the storm as she listens to the weather news. Kim Yeonju stares thoughtfully at the sky while touching her window pane. The rain in the city grows even heavier, but everything seems calm inside the yoga studio. The yoga instructor Jung Miang stretches. She jumps in surprise and looks to the side. She sees a bird frantically crashing into her window. It screeches loudly and is completely soaked. She walks over to the window where the bird keeps hitting nonstop. As she gets closer, several birds strike the studio window forcefully at the same time. The instructor is confused, not understanding why they're suddenly doing that, until something catches her attention. She gets scared and asks what that thing she's seeing is. The sea advances like a flood. The rocks crack and fall. Lee Min-jun lost one of his arms. In fact, he lost both. The red dragon tells the agent that he's stronger than expected. The strength of that dragon is compared to that of ancient dragons. The shadows begin to grow and form 2 arms for the agent, but the red dragon says that's not enough. At that moment, Jenkinson says it's time to show the strength of true ancients. He flies and spits a ball of energy toward Jang. Jang retaliates with a powerful blast upward. A massive explosion happens in the sky. Lee Min-jun seems to have been hit in one of his arms. The dragons battle furiously in the sky. The sea waves crash against the rock. The storm keeps falling harder and harder, until a great silence follows. The agent and the red dragon look down and see the other dragon floating in the sea. Jenkinson asks if, before dying, Jang can answer who were the benefactors behind his plan. The dragon Jang Taejun says he doesn't know anything about them, they just wanted to help, to develop a virus on this little backwater planet, without being discovered by the other dragons. The 2 observe from above as the dragon passes. At that moment, Min-jun receives a message through telepathy. Jang asks if he has the forest homunculus with him. The agent says yes. The dragon looks into the agent's eyes and says he's going to send him a valuable message. The message is inside a cash vault at Changchun Bank. Closing his eyes, Jang says he'd like Lee Min-jun to retrieve that message. In silence, the agent watches, unsure what to do. At that moment, Jang Taejun departs once and for all. As they watch, the storm continues to fall. A few days later, everything seems to return to normal. The agent arrives at the door of a beautiful and well-kept flower shop. He says he's going to buy a plant, while a radio on the counter announces the local news. The radio starts reporting that the storm from the previous week caused so much damage that the government declared it a natural phenomenon. The saleswoman hears it and doesn't believe the rain was truly natural. According to her, events that big aren't just natural. Lee Min-jun thinks about how hard it is to give another name to a battle of that scale. The dragon told the agent a secret before leaving. He planted a virus in the homunculus of his false body and cast a spell on the disease. The spell makes the virus withstand up to 500 degrees of heat. The agent says goodbye to the vendor and she wishes him a good trip. He gets in his car and drives off through the city. It was just another ordinary day in Seoul. The agent looks at the homunculus and decides to hand it over to the immigration department, but something still leaves him deep in thought. The day begins to darken on the sidewalk outside the library. Lee Min-jun decides to do a search on his computer and sees the report of his mission with Jang Taejun. He looks to the side and opens a drawer. Inside the drawer, there's a vial of fluid. The agent looks at it and wonders how the virus can only work on dragons. He closes the drawer and says no one can know he's keeping that. He looks at the computer and continues searching. Our agent keeps thinking about the telepathic conversation he had with Jang. He remembers that the billionaire asked about Kim. Before leaving, he wanted to know how she was. The agent replied that she was doing fine. Jang says she was very confused and unstable. He says she feared rejection and always confused attachment with anger. From the very first time he met her, she deceived him 3 times. The first time she hid the affair she had with her friend. The second time she snapped, saying she felt used. The third time she joined Adelines to kidnap him. Jang confesses that he felt deeply hated by her. Meanwhile, Lee Min-jun continues his work. On his desk is a will. On the computer, he edits the mission report. In the summary of the will, he writes that Jang Taejun requested that his shares be donated to a foundation for the restoration of society. All of his properties, wealth, jewelry, and remaining works of art should go to the human he was involved with before he died. The agent looks at the keyboard and says that Jang Taejun was a complete fool, and finishes his work. A woman gazes at the sunset by the sea. She holds the will in her hands. As she reads the will, a man walks right behind her and asks what a young, beautiful woman is doing looking so sad by the sea. The woman stays quiet as she sees a shadow in the water. She takes out a fisherman's hat, hugs the hat against her chest and cries with longing. The woman falls to her knees on the ground as the man passing by worries about her condition. He asks whose hat it is, and she answers that it belonged to her supervisor. Kim Yeonju hugs the hat tightly as tears stream down her face. The director looks toward the horizon while lamenting that the person she loved the most is gone forever. There's a set of Hwada cards on the table. Our agent looks at the cards, focused on what they are trying to tell him. He crosses his arms and starts thinking so deeply that his mind drifts away. Lee Min-jun begins to have visions of the future. Regarding the weather, the cards say it will be dry and stable, with no rain. Regarding health, that he should eat better. As for relationships, the cards say he will meet someone he hasn't seen in a long time. While he looks at the predictions in the cards, his thoughts are interrupted by the weather news on TV. The meteorologist reports high chances of rain in the Gwangjin district. Then the woman on TV starts talking about natural disaster forecasts. Lee Min-jun begins to doubt the card predictions because the meteorologist says it will rain, while the cards say the weather will stay dry. He places his hands on the cards and tries another method of prediction taught to him by the aliens. Among all the cards, he picks only one. The card confirms that he will reunite with someone he hasn't seen in a long time. A red car speeds down the streets. A woman with wind-blown hair drives the car while our friend rides shotgun. They park. Kathy looks at the agent and tells him they've arrived. The agent complains that she drives too fast, and she responds that if he doesn't like it, he can drive instead. The secretary says they're only going there to do some shopping, and Min-jun agrees. The two of them walk into a center filled with tall buildings. They're at a Witch Partnership Alliance Center. When they enter the building, they are welcomed by two witches wearing long white hats. They bow and say they've been eagerly awaiting his arrival. The witches say they've set aside all the items he requested, and they lead the agent and his secretary to wait inside a VIP room. Inside the room, Kathy is amazed by the amount of cool stuff there. She looks at the agent and asks if he has some kind of powerful sample to try with them. Lee Min-jun thinks that Kathy could never imagine what kind of potion he has to trade with the witches. She has no idea that he has liters of fresh dragon life fluid. One of the witches says she'll offer 3 billion won for the material. As they leave, he tells Kathy she can go ahead because he needs to use the restroom. A man in that place watches the agent go into the bathroom. He looks and asks if that's not Agent Lee Min-jun. The agent looks and feels awkward because he doesn't remember where he knows the man from. Our agent approaches him and asks who he is. The man replies that he's John Nangyu. At that moment, he remembers that this man was the lawyer in the case of the missing billionaire. The lawyer apologizes, saying he was busy the last time they met, but now needs to tell him something. The agent says that before anything, he urgently needs to use the restroom. In a more comfortable spot, he asks the agent if he worked at the immigration department. Our friend confirms. John Nangyu asks if he doesn't take on private cases. Lee Min-jun says that unless it's a very special case, he's not interested. The lawyer says he has a client who is going through a difficult situation. The agent says he's sorry, but he can't help. So the agent apologizes for the inconvenience and says he has some things to take care of. But before leaving, the lawyer gives his card to the agent, just in case he changes his mind. As John walks out the door, the agent looks back. At that moment, he remembers the third prediction from the cards, saying he would reunite with someone he hadn't seen in a long time. He imagines he was just hallucinating and puts the card in his pocket. He walks out and the witch thanks him for waiting so long. She gives him a black briefcase. The agent meets up with Kathy and apologizes for taking so long. They go down the escalator together. Suddenly, Kathy calls the agent and says she needs to ask something. She asks if he ever created a new identity after committing some major crime in the past, and in that moment, he freezes. The agent stays silent, not knowing how to answer. He turns to Kathy and asks if he looks like someone who would do that. She looks at the agent, unsure how to respond. They keep walking while she says she's been thinking that if he's not a really good man, then he must have committed some very serious crime. It had to be one or the other. The agent starts to think about how sharp her intuition was at that moment. She has no idea who he really is. Kathy looks at him again and asks to know just one more thing. He gets worried but tells her to go ahead and ask. At that moment, she gets nervous and asks if in the past he was a woman or something like that. The agent looks at her, not understanding what she's asking. And Kathy says she can't stand how he tries to keep his identity secret no matter what. Embarrassed and confused, she says she doesn't even know what to think about him anymore. Kathy gets upset because she really wants to know who he truly is. She keeps muttering while our friend just looks at her, completely lost. A person with a cane starts approaching them. Lee Min-jun notices that someone different is entering the area. An old man walks in, holding a cane with a woman helping him walk. The agent looks at the old man. The old man looks back at him, shocked. Suddenly, he stops and stares at the agent. The old man starts trembling and stands there, mouth wide open. He starts shouting and walking toward the agent. The old man asks if he is Yi Min-jun. The agent looks at him and replies that yes, he is. At that moment, the old man is overwhelmed with emotion and tears in his eyes because he finally met his older brother in person. A woman with her hair tied back and a red business suit looks to the left. A man in a blue suit looks to the right. President Jenkinson's secretary, Blair Campbell, asks not to be called by that name. A tiny executive fairy appears between them. She is Lalisa Andreeva, general director of Jenkinson's company. Lalisa lands and sits on Blair's desk. She grabs her cigarette holder. While watching Lalisa with the cigarette, the secretary asks what the problem is. The director says she found evidence of a break-in at a house. The secretary gets furious, wondering who would dare enter a place that only ancient dragons can access. The director says it might be a coincidence that this happened just when the president had to be away from the company. Blair says she will report it to the president and request more security for the location, but Lalisa says that might not be enough. The secretary then wonders who they can turn to for help at a time like this. Yi Min-jun doesn't know what to do in that awkward situation. Kathy starts questioning him about why the old man called him older brother. The man apologizes for his impulsiveness and says it's just an old habit from 30 years ago to call friends older brother. The agent says it's been a long time since he last saw him and asks how he's been. The old man laughs, saying it's funny that the agent remembers him, and replies that he's setting up a small alchemy workshop. He asks Yi Min-jun if he still knows how to teach magic. Our friend replies that he doesn't teach magic anymore. He just works as an agent at an immigration company. The old man is shocked that he became an agent and asks how he got such a difficult job. The woman accompanying him looks at the agent with curiosity and asks if he only works for the agency or also takes on private jobs. The old man gets annoyed and tells her to drop the subject. He says goodbye to the agent and the secretary, saying he needs to solve a problem on the 3rd floor as several security guards accompany them. On the way, he looks back and says to the agent that it was a great pleasure to see him again. Yi Min-jun and Kathy hit the road again in the red car. She asks the agent if he really taught magic to the old man they saw earlier. He says yes. Kathy jokes, saying he must have been a teacher by day and an alien hunter by night. The agent says he doesn't like people or the government knowing too much about his past. Kathy starts yelling, saying she doesn't understand why he wants to hide his past from the government. She says his story would make a great book and that he seems even more amazing than she could have imagined. The agent remains silent, thinking that no one should ever know his true story. Back when Earth was colonized and wrapped entirely in darkness, most people believed the dragons ruled everything, but the dragons were just puppets. The real control came from a secret committee that operated in the shadows. On October 24th, the day of the first contact between humans and aliens is celebrated. Yi Min-jun tells Kathy how the World Committee is waiting to join humans in making decisions about Earth. The committee needs to unite Earth's representatives to accept alien immigrants. They come to Earth as part of an exchange to visit and learn how everything works here. Kathy looks at the agent and says she's heard a lot of those stories in books. She says that back then, very few people knew how to use magic, and the committee taught humans everything they know, helping the planet develop greatly from what it learned. The agent looks at Kathy, doubtful about the kind of development she has in mind. As he drinks from a bottle of water, he thinks the book she read seems to have skipped the ugly parts. The car brakes and they finally arrive at their destination. At the bookstore entrance stands Dongchul, pushing his boss in a wheelchair. The elf asks where they'd been, and the two say they were just taking a stroll through the mall. The agent and Kathy head upstairs. Yi Min-jun turns the doorknob, but before entering his office, he turns to his secretary and says she can go home now. Kathy gives him a sweet look and says she'd love to hear about his past over a cup of tea. The agent replies that she can have some tea and then leave. Inside the office, Kathy sips a delicious hot tea. The agent asks if she's going to stay much longer because it's time for her to go home. At that moment, they hear someone knocking at the door. Yi Min-jun says it's strange because he wasn't expecting anyone. He checks the front door camera and is surprised by who's come to visit. He immediately remembers the card prediction, and then he sees a familiar bright smile on the camera. In the office, Kathy prepares tea for 3 people. She introduces herself to the blonde man in the red suit and asks what he does for a living. The agent says they worked together many years ago. The man says he doesn't understand why Yi Min-jun never reached out to him before, but then he asks if the agent ever got a message from that woman. Yi Min-jun looks confused and asks which woman he's talking about. The man looks incredulous and says he can't believe that woman never tried to contact our friend. The agent looks at him and asks again who this woman is. The man replies that he's talking about Dell, and our friend is left in shock. Min-jun asks why Dell wants to know about him while Kathy listens to everything. The secretary asks the agent why he suddenly seems so nervous. A long time ago, a beautiful woman with red hair was our friend's wife. Night falls, and the friends decide to go out together. They head to a bar nearby in the same city. Lee Min-jun orders a double shot of a strong drink. His longtime visiting friend orders the same drink. They're both served by a magical one-eyed tree trunk. The man says the bar feels very different and unique. He drinks the double shot chosen by the agent and immediately spits it out, saying the drink is way too strong. Our friend laughs and says he must have forgotten the old days. The man says the drink is so strong it tastes like pure alcohol. The agent says that now that they got alcohol in their systems, they can start talking. Meanwhile, the man notices the agent has placed a sound barrier between them. Lee Min-jun asks Bradley what an American agent is doing in Korea, as he enjoys the fruits on the table. Bradley replies that he's in Korea to escort Princess Burmy of Galanko. The agent remembers hearing earlier about a visiting alien princess. He was in the car with the lieutenant when the radio announced the princess's visit to Korea. But our agent still didn't understand one thing, because they sent an American agent to escort a royal from Galanko. Bradley explains that the security from her country is too hot-headed to be on Earth, so for safety reasons she will be accompanied by local agents. Min-jun says he still doesn't understand why Korea requested American agents. He says Korean security isn't enough, that's why they asked for reinforcements. It seems this visit will open the way for a new mass migration to Earth. The agent is shocked, saying this will be the 8th major mass migration in 40 years. Bradley says there's one more detail. The average height of their species is around 3.5 meters. They're bigger than trolls. It seems this mass migration will be complicated because the planet has no infrastructure for it. Lee Min-jun says the story is interesting, but he wants to talk about something else. He wants to talk about Del. Bradley says he doesn't know many details about her, but while they were sent to Earth, Del was separated from them and sent somewhere else. But all Bradley knows is that she made a lot of money and managed to get released from her sentence. So he thought the first thing she might do is try to find him. Lee Min-jun is outraged and slams the table upon hearing that she was released. Our agent's friend says she might have done something incredible to earn amnesty. The agent asks if she could have done something as incredible as Telisia. Bradley looks at him and falls silent in thought. The agent says if she got amnesty, then she might have also regained her memories. Lee Min-jun's friend asks if he's afraid of the memories of his ex-wife. He says Min-jun married her because she was the only one who could tolerate his mood. Our friend says her love is kind of strange. She believes that by ending him, she'll be setting him free. However, if she kills him, she'll lose her soul forever and won't have a chance to reincarnate in a better place. Bradley says then he should be careful, because she might show up to end his life. Lee Min-jun says he'll never forget the words she said the last time. She asked him to wait because she would come back to him. Bradley looks at him and tells him to look on the bright side. Maybe she'll really come back as Telisia. Somewhere else in the universe there's a republic called Ashtal, controlled by a dictator. The dictator oppresses and terrorizes the population that tries to rebel against his rule. Once he committed a massive atrocity on a planet called XC21. The people there tried to rebel, and so the dictator cut off all food supplies to the planet. With nothing to eat, people turned against each other, until the people of XC21 planned a great coup. Cornered, the dictator said he wouldn't go down alone. He pressed a red button before harming himself, and the entire planetary complex under his rule exploded. The level of civilization in those planets dropped drastically. People suffered through a long period of poverty. Mothers had no way to feed their children, and while the people of that planet suffered more each day, a large spaceship flew across the skies before them, and the Grand Committee sent its prisoners to rebuild the nation. The reconstruction lasted around 300 years in Ashtal. Our agent took part in that reconstruction, and it was there that he met Del. Among the prisoners, there was one who stood out above all the rest. Telisia elevated Ashtal's reconstruction to extraordinary levels. That great heroine with blue hair was regarded as the great mother of all. She looks forward and sees an abandoned house. Earlier in that place, which looked like hell itself, the Great Mother found desperate people with nothing to eat. She saw with her own eyes all that despair. At first she thought long and hard about what to do. How could she help all those people? Suddenly, the seeds of change began to appear. She saw that the people began to eat better thanks to her help. The people kissed her hands in gratitude for what she had done. She saved them from thieves and gave them a new chance. She became the great savior of those people, worshipped by all. Everyone loves Telisia, and she loves everyone back. At the end of the afternoon, the agent returns to his office. He turns the doorknob with one of his hands and takes a deep breath as he sits in his chair in front of the computer and starts to think about something regarding Telisia. She apparently had no special powers. She simply had good politics. Telisia knew how to negotiate between planets and governments, and that accelerated Ashtal's growth. Ever since the dictator pressed that button, bringing total destruction to the planets, insects from the galaxy tried to devastate everything, and the protective barriers were destroyed. The committee's friends constantly witnessed those attacks, and then the prisoners had to take action to protect Ashtal. However, the reconstruction led by Telisia was overwhelming. She treated everyone with great care and respect, but after 300 years she said her goodbyes. After all her work in Ashtal, she received amnesty as recognition. Through a simple act of love, she was able to free herself. She received acknowledgement from all the prisoners of the committee, and in tears she said she would never forget any of them. Telisia promised that even though she was now free, she would return to Ashtal. With a wide smile, she said her final farewell. She took a deep breath and began her transformation. At that moment, her body was surrounded by a brilliant magic. The first step toward liberation is regaining your memories. She sighed deeply once more, until something very different began to happen. Electromagnetic waves began to surround her mind. Everyone watched in astonishment. Her hands started trembling uncontrollably, and a powerful wind rushed through the area. Telisia received all her memories back. At that moment, her mind shattered into many pieces. Telisia fell to her knees on the ground, her hands covering her face. Yi Minjun approached, asking what had gone wrong. She looked at her hands and kept apologizing over and over. Telisia looked up, eyes bulging, and began to scream. In desperation, she begged to go back. She cried out, pleading to leave that place. At that moment, a magical portal opened before her. The committee opened the portal after her plea, and once she left, she never came back. Telisia took her own life. Yi Minjun sits watching from his chair, wondering how much more he has to pay to gain his freedom. Still seated, he thinks with his arms crossed, how tragic his old memories could be. But even so, he would never do what Telisia did to herself. The news on TV reports that the price of ore has dropped and that Princess Burmy's presence has increased local immigration. Watching the report, people comment that this could be very bad. Planet Earth is becoming a world of monsters, not just normal people. A man looks up, and his eyes can't believe what they see. Frightened, he drops his phone and asks what's going on. The population sees a mountain in the city releasing colorful smoke. In the office, Jenkinson's secretary and director tremble with fear. The flaming red dragon demands answers about a theft in Zone B31X, and he's furious because there doesn't seem to be any lead on the suspect. The two confirm that there really are no suspects. The dragon grabs the case file and sets it on fire. He says the committee is going to kick his ass if the problem isn't solved. The dragon looks at Lalisa and asks if she knows how much he spends on their salaries. She says she does. While she trembles, he throws it in her face that he's already spent over $1 million just on her salary. She's shocked when Jenkinson tells her not to make him reconsider his old thoughts. Jenkinson says he used to consume protein to stay healthy, especially fairy protein. She tells him not to even think about that. The dragon warns Blair to also be careful with what he might do. He says he doesn't like working with a weak race and thought she was different from the others. At that moment, the secretary clenches her fist in anger. The dragon says he's going to deal with the committee and will ask for all portals on Earth to be closed. He tells Blair to contact the Great Leader and stay at his disposal. After giving all the orders, the dragon vanishes from in front of them, and inside the portal, he begins thinking about how terrible the situation is. Meanwhile, Yi Minjun is sitting and thinking. He moves a piece in his game. The agent looks at Jongpal and asks who invented that damn thing. They start talking about how the princess's visit shook up Seoul's economy. The lieutenant says the visit affected the entire city, especially the traffic. Then he crosses his arms and tells the agent to stop stalling and just play already. Yi Minjun is frustrated because he lost the game bet to Jongpal again. The officer gets up and says he's going to grab another drink for the agent from the fridge. He looks at Kathy, who is preparing something. She's extremely focused, making a dish that doesn't look very appetizing. Jongpal glances quickly and doesn't understand a thing. As he brings the beer to the agent, he asks if he knows what Kathy is up to. The agent says she and the smart frying pan have become best friends. Yi Minjun tells him to leave Kathy alone and shows a new game they can play. At that moment, his phone starts vibrating out of nowhere. He gets annoyed, wondering who could be bothering him at a time like that. It was just an elf secretary asking for help. The three of them start walking through the forest looking for something. He asks if a fairy can see well in the forest. She says she's trying. The agent closes his eyes and asks how they managed to see the spirit world. Blair replies that they can't actually do that. They walk up to a huge door standing in the middle of the forest. Yi Minjun walks through the door expecting to find some spirits in there. The night before, Bukan Mountain burned for 6 hours. Maybe some dragons fought there, and the Great Fire was used as part of a powerful spell. Either way, that huge spell erased all spiritual traces from the place. Lalisa asks the agent if they should bring in a dryad, and Yi Minjun asks what a dryad is. She explains that local wild animals can help tell what happened through a dryad. He says the animals that survived the fire probably fled, until suddenly he has an idea. He figured that if the surviving animals fled, they could try a different way. Maybe the animals that didn't survive could say something. Lee Min-jun takes out his dagger and wounds his own hand. Everything seems calm in the late afternoon. Someone appears to be listening to local news on their earphones. In a tattoo studio, a man screams in pain while the tattoo artist looks completely calm. The man tattoos steadily while listening to a pro-human protest. The client pays for the service. As he walks out of the studio, the orc says he's never felt so much pain just for a drawing. He looks at the tattoo artist and asks if he offers a guarantee in case it doesn't heal well. Du Yong-seok tells him to follow all the aftercare instructions and it'll be fine. The orc walks out grumbling about the instructions but says he'll trust him. After the orc client leaves and closes the door, the human curses all his generations. The sun is still setting over the city. The police are working to keep the city in order at any moment. The goblins kneel on the ground, apologizing a million times. The officer yells that they need to get up and board the bus. He loses his patience, saying that bunch of greenies are nothing but idiots. The lieutenant asks what he's doing, and the officer responds that goblins are too dumb to understand simple orders. Out of patience, the lieutenant says that's enough. He tells the officer never to speak like that again anywhere. The lieutenant crouches and, with all the patience in the world, asks the goblins to get on the bus. He promises that after they go, they'll return safely. The goblins board and the bus drives off toward its destination. The lieutenant and the officer watch the bus depart. He comments that since Princess Burmy's visit, the city's security has been extreme. At that moment, his phone starts vibrating non-stop in his pants pocket. Lee Min-jun was calling him. Jong-pal answers, and our friend asks if he has a moment to talk about something important. The agent asks if he remembers the case in the Orc district they went to last time together. Lee Min-jun asks if he remembers the tattooed guy they asked for information. Jong-pal says his name is Kim Yu-shin. The agent says he wants to learn more about the meaning and origin of his tattoos. The lieutenant says he gets the question but wants to know what's so special about the tattoos. Min-jun explains that the tattoos have ancient letters that mean. While the agent explains, the lieutenant starts to panic. The sun begins to set in front of the tattoo studio. The tattoo artist sits, wondering whether to close early today since it's an important day. To him, today is a truly important day. He decides to close early and locks the door with a padlock. Du Yong-seok gets annoyed when he sees a crow has made a mess of the trash. He scares it away by stomping loudly. The tattoo artist gets really furious about the whole thing, and his mood goes down the drain. He looks up and sees lots of crows on the poles and gets upset. As he walks through the streets, he thinks about how alien immigration will be bad for humans. The crows gather together on the power lines, and all of them watch the man walk away while he complains that Earth is the only home humans have in the universe. After that, they take off flying through the sky. A hand grabs a feather from above. Lee Min-jun examines the raiden feather more closely. The tattoo artist keeps walking through the city, while listening through his earpiece about how humans feel threatened by the arrival of aliens on the planet. A masked man says that humans are threatened by dragons and orcs. He slams the table, saying that dragons are controlling demons, while orcs are nothing more than creatures that reproduce like rats. However, there's a new race even worse than dragons and orcs. The man says it's no surprise since the 8th wave of mass alien immigration. Then he picks up a remote and asks the guests if they're ready to see the race. He says this new race makes pigs look closer to humans, and they're 3.5 meters tall. Trembling on stage, he says society is not ready for another mass immigration. Then the masked man calls everyone to protest against immigration. The first step is to capture an alien, no matter what happens. There's a tall hotel in the middle of the city. At the hotel entrance, someone asks a man for his cooperation before entering. The translator's name is Olga, and she says she'll explain the rules of how everything will go. Bradley listens eagerly. He asks Olga what the demands of Princess Burmy are. Before answering, she thinks carefully. Olga says the princess has terrible anxiety and that he'll need a bit of patience. Bradley hears the princess's demands and is a bit startled as Olga questions whether they think they're enough to ensure her safety. Bradley laughs and says he can't believe she still needs more security. The translator says the princess is behind the door inside that room. She knocks 3 times on the door. Inside the room, someone is wrapped in a blanket and looking out the window. When they hear the knock, they're startled badly and let out a loud scream that shakes everything around. That crocodile Shuken is Princess Burmy. Olga says the princess is thrilled to meet him while wiping off the crocodile drool. Agent Bradley says he's also excited to get to know her better. Night falls outside in Seoul. A mysterious man tells Du Yong-seok that if he passes the test, he can become one of them. The man places some photos on the table before explaining what he has to do. The tattoo artist looks at one of the photos and recognizes that those were some of his clients. The ancestral tattoos say bad things about orcs. However, they don't understand what's written since they've been illiterate since they were just slaves in other dimensions. The tattoo artist asks if that's a problem that would keep him from joining the Brotherhood. The mysterious man says it's not that bad, but he says he needs to leave fewer traces and move his studio because at some point, one of them might understand what's written. The man stands up saying he'll give him everything he needs to complete the plan. As he leaves, he invites Du Yong-seok to head out. The tattoo artist is about to face the final obstacle to become a member of the Brotherhood. The human smiles and agrees, saying he's ready. A sewer rat appears, lit up by magic. A square portal opens on the wall. Du Yong-seok watches everything with his human eyes. There are materials and tools on the table. There are skulls with lit candles illuminating the darkness. And there's also an orc, tied with arms spread and mouth covered. The man offers a dagger to the tattoo artist and asks if he's ready for the final trial. Du Yong-seok approaches the tied-up orc. He walks closer while telling himself that orcs aren't human, orcs aren't people. He remembers how many times orcs weren't kind to him. He was hurt by them many times. He looks down, telling himself he doesn't need to think too much about it. The orc looks at him with tears in his eyes, unable to say a word. At that moment, the tattoo artist doesn't think too much. He raises his hands and gathers his courage. He brings them down toward the orc's chest in a precise strike. But at that moment, something strange happens. Du Yong-seok looks at his arms and realizes his hands have fallen off. He starts screaming in despair as he sees them on the ground. Suddenly, someone steps forward. The Brotherhood members wonder who could have done that. The mysterious man doesn't understand what kind of magic that was. He wonders if he knows who they are and how he breached security. Suddenly, someone walks through the door asking what's going on. That one is the real magician in the story. Blair bows before the agent. He watches without saying a word. Agent thinks about how the subordinates at Jenkinson's corporate suffer, and also how dragons can't defeat time. Minjun asks if she doesn't know what kind of person they're looking for, and she replies that she doesn't. She just needs traces of the suspect before the boss gets back. The agent asks when he returns, and Blair says they don't have much time. Our friend asks if the magic terminal is shut down. He glances to the side and notices something. He remembers being with John Paul during a pro-human protest. A hand rises with a magic portal and says it's going to show something to the brothers. The mysterious man from the Human Rights Solidarity appears cloaked, with other brothers behind him. In the past, dragon-led operations failed, and meanwhile the Brotherhood gained members all over the world. Yi Minjun looks at Blair and says he'll help, but the mission will be harder than usual. Blair and Lalisa are very happy with our friend's help. The agent says he'll help, but it won't be free or cheap. The secretary says she'll give him whatever he asks for. She'll hand him a blank check for him to write the amount he needs. The agent stares in disbelief that he's getting a blank check. The two women are overjoyed. However, the agent grows concerned. He leaves, saying he'll make contact once he discovers something, and Blair thanks him. The agent walks away, thinking that this was a good opportunity. He says he knows nothing about the tattoos, but he also says he'll do everything he can to solve the case. The Brotherhood members watch, not understanding what just happened. Yi Minjun appears, imagining his blank check will have a lot of zeros. He extends his hand. The orc doesn't understand what's going on. Then he closes his fist. The prisoner is shocked, but stands up, still confused about what just happened. The agent looks at him and tells him to leave. The brothers are terrified as their leader tries to keep everything under control. Still at the door, the agent regains control of his fist while reciting magical words. The leader says Yi Minjun will regret messing with the society. He claims they have just as much magic as he does. Suddenly, one of them seems to release a strange smoke. The leader looks to the side, not understanding what happened. The agent points at them and says he only needed one loose mouth for a full confession. There's a skull in the corner, all stained with red liquid. The Human Rights Society members are terrified by what they see. The tattoo artist collapses in front of them, and his glasses burn away with magic. The group leader says they learned that from the witches. He looks at his opponent and regrets saying anything. It seems the one in front of them is a very different kind of alien. Who said you need to be a dragon to be a dangerous opponent? Olga says the princess eats 20 kilos of raw meat every 6 hours. She says Bradley's job is to make sure none of it is poisoned. And one more important thing. Once a day, everyone must stay 10 meters away from her because she gets stressed. Bradley asks what time that happens. Olga says there's no set time. Also, since the princess has no mate, she regularly lays sterile eggs. And when those eggs hatch, they produce an extremely valuable metal. In other words, she pretty much lays golden egg. The American agent says he understood all the recommendations. A society member complains about what happened to his friend. He says he'll take action over it even if it costs his life. The society member opens his mouth and bites his own arm hard. True dark magic requires a very big sacrifice. What kind of monster can he become with such a sacrifice? Yi Minjun watches that kind of magic and begins to speak some dark magic words. The monster looks worried. Another society member screams while going up in flames. His partner looks on, desperate and confused by what's happening. The society leader looks forward and asks what he did. The agent replies saying it seems his friend inhaled too much fire. He looks at Yi Minjun and calls him a filthy monster. His hand opens, full of magic, and he says he's now ready to face him. because he finally managed to summon the shadow monster. As long as it's not a dragon, the magic is ready, and the monster is prepared for this moment. He looks at the agent and says they can now have a more honest conversation. Sitting at the table, he looks forward and asks if he's still awake. The boy in front of him jumps in surprise. He asks why the agent chose to study at the Oslo Fighting School instead of joining the Human Rights Society. Minjun looks confused, not understanding what he just said. Theo Jansen is one of the most wanted men among nations, having become the leading expert in dark magic. Now the agent realizes that the boy has mistaken him for Christy Jansen. He casts his truth-seeking fly at the boy and watches to see the magic take effect. At that moment, the boy sneezed so hard that he knocked the magic fly to the ground. The agent realizes that this boy seems to be on another level in society. The boy looks at Yi Minjun and tells him to just finish this already. He says he's not like the agent but also knows how to use dark magic. The agent stands up and says he feels challenged. He says he's going to do something quick to wrap up this job. The boy starts to get nervous and sweats a lot. Yi Minjun looks at his dagger and says he recently met a dragon. He left not long ago and might be feeling lonely wherever he is. The young man stares at the agent, not understanding a damn word he's saying. The agent looks at the boy and says he's about to become someone very bad in that moment. He picks up the dagger and places it right in front of the young boy's eyes. The agent says he'll regret ever being born. Everything bursts into flames. The taxi speeds through the city. The agent says he got no information about Warehouse B39, but it seems the Human Rights Society is planning something big soon, and they should stay alert. Right now, all efforts should be focused on the passage of Princess Burmy. The B39 warehouse case will be handled soon. Blair says she understood all the commands Yi Minjun gave over the phone. She apologizes and says she just needs to ask one more favor. The payment for the job will be as large as the task itself. She says that if he needs more money, it won't be a problem. They'll give him everything he needs. In the tall building in the middle of the city, Ova introduces herself to our agent. She says Yi Minjun is one of the best agents in Korea and the princess will be happy to meet him. He looks on and thinks maybe the princess is bait for the Human Rights Society. At the same time, Jenkinson and Blair want him to play a tough game. No matter what happens, the council will try to protect him. At that moment, Olga knocks 3 times on the bedroom door. She smiles at the princess and asks permission to enter. The princess is sitting with the American agent. Bradley looks up and recognizes Yi Minjun. He greets the agent, and this catches Olga's attention. The princess looks at the agent shocked. The wind blows into the room through the window. He introduces himself to the princess, saying his name is Yi Minjun. At that moment, she starts drooling while staring at the agent. Bradley pays close attention to what's happening. It looks like the princess has completely fallen in love with our friend. A romantic atmosphere seems to fill the air. Our friend wonders about the pheromones the princess is releasing. At that moment, you could hear the sound of a heart pounding strongly. The princess starts to exude a very strong scent. The agent realizes he might be in serious trouble from now on. Princess Burmy's eyes stay locked on Yi Minjun's movements. She suddenly starts screaming desperately in an alien language. Bradley asks Olga what she said, and she replies that the princess is ready to lay some eggs. The American agent doesn't understand why she wants to do that today of all days. Olga says that roar was her preparation for mating. Yi Minjun starts walking around the hotel room and takes in the view. The day is beautiful, and the sun is shining brightly outside. The agent starts to wonder if the shootin' race always wants to lay eggs like this in the middle of the day. Bradley says he had no idea Yi Minjun would be part of the security reinforcement. Our friend tells Olga that he's going to step out for a moment to talk with Bradley. The two of them head outside the room to get some fresh air. The agent tells the American about the Human Rights Society, and he gets scared by what he hears. The American says he has a plan, but that news could change a lot of things. Bradley confirms to our friend that the princess likely has no idea about it. He stops to think for a moment as a frightening sound comes from the room. Yi Minjun gets startled, and Bradley says it's the sound of the princess laying her eggs. The agent thinks that sound doesn't seem unfamiliar. He's heard that sound before coming to Earth. Bradley says it sounds like terrible pain. He explains that Shutanian women suffer that pain every day naturally. Yi Minjun thinks about how hard it must be to feel that daily. He's completely terrified by knowing what that pain feels like. While his thoughts drift away, someone desperately calls out to him. Bradley asks what he was thinking about because he's been calling him for a while. Olga watches the two agents talking outside. The next day, the city goes on with an apparently normal routine. Something begins to shine a bright gold, like pure gold. Bradley is almost blinded and asks what that is. Princess Burmy's feet appear to be covered in pure gold. So is her neck. She appears completely transformed, with golden glowing skin. Olga suspects the princess went overboard trying to look beautiful. The princess walks out of the hotel looking like she's searching for someone, until she sees something that catches her attention. The princess sees our handsome friend standing right in front of her. In that moment, her cheeks turn pink, and she becomes terribly shy. Lee Min-jun can't believe she's acting like that because of him. Olga walks over and says she needs to share something important. A giant car tire rolls up to the hotel door. The princess insists on traveling by car instead of teleporting. Bradley wonders why the princess insists on seeing the entire city. Is the princess really here for the mass immigration, or is she just curious to see how this dimension works? They talk about all the security paperwork they still need to sign. Bradley tells Princess Burmy that he and Lee Min-jun will accompany her in the car. Olga translates all the Americans' instructions for her. She replies to Olga happily, her cheeks still blushing. Olga pays close attention to everything the princess says. She turns to the agents and asks politely to speak. She needs to know which of them is stronger because only one will accompany her. The car moves through the city. The princess is dying of embarrassment. Lee Min-jun watches everything happening inside the car. The three sit quietly on their way to the destination. Olga says the princess gets upset when she feels cramped, so she wants as few people as possible in the car. She asks if Agent Bradley would mind taking the other car. She gazes at our friend with loving eyes. At that moment, he was simply the most handsome man in the entire universe. With her hands on her chest, she begins to scream inside the car. Olga panics and asks if she needs help. She looks at the translator and says something in Shoutanian. Olga looks at her and understands everything she's saying, and is shocked by all the words she hears. Princess Burmy pulls her legs up and looks visibly embarrassed by the moment. Olga calls our agent. She says she takes her job as a translator very seriously and is a professional. However, she needs to relay some words from the princess. The car they're in is bigger than a truck. Lee Min-jun is completely shocked by what Olga says. Princess Burmy dies of embarrassment from the proposal she made. In our princess's mind, the two of them could make a perfect couple. The car drives through the streets of Seoul. The agent can't take the awkwardness anymore. He feels like he has no choice but to go along with the princess's wishes, but he'll put a stop to everything if she crosses the line. She asks Olga to find out if his name is really Lee Min-jun. He says yes, and the princess asks if he's ever visited Galanko. Lee Min-jun says he's never been there and asks what kind of place it is. The princess says it's the most beautiful place in the universe. There the nights have 2 moons and the sea shines a brilliant blue. 4-winged birds fly through the sky. Intoxicated by the scent of flowers, she says her home is wonderful. She says she heard he's a half-elf raised on Earth and wants to know his age. Lee Min-jun says he was born in 1945, and that body is not his true body. The princess says he's very young and has less than half her age. Burmy asks how long he has been a half-elf, and he says he doesn't know. She asks if he would consider living in another dimension besides Earth. The agent starts to realize they're crossing some boundaries. Lee Min-jun apologizes, but the princess apologizes first. She's truly dying of embarrassment from the whole atmosphere. Burmy looks at the agent and says it's the first time in her life she's seen a creature as beautiful as he is. He feels awkward about the whole thing. The princess's official car continues driving across the bridge in Seoul. Princess Burmy says it's the first time in her life that she's shared space with a man. That's why she seems so confused about her feelings at that moment. She apologizes for making him uncomfortable, but says she doesn't really know how to act. The agent looks at Burmy and says it's all right. Lee Min-jun says chastity seems to be something important for Shoutanian women. He asks if it's an ancient tradition. Burmy says she doesn't know, as she's never really stopped to think about it. The princess says he might not know, but it could be a tradition over 800 years old. Lee Min-jun starts to think that he once studied about the culture of Galanko. Princess Burmy produces golden eggs every day, and released a very strong pheromone when she saw him, even though he was a different species. He starts to think those behaviors are different from what he read about the Shounen race. Could our friend have some memory from 800 years ago? Could he have lived in Galanko before coming to Earth? They usually have very strong personalities, especially with other races. However, they seem to have changed a bit to adapt to other dimensions. The agent looks at Princess Burmy and asks if the Shoutanians will all come to Earth at once. She says she heard rumors of mass immigration but can't confirm. Burmy says Earth's infrastructure is incompatible with them. The princess says that tiny little planet doesn't have the capacity to receive them. The agent then asks if she's there just for business meetings. She answers saying that if everything goes as planned, yes. Maybe she'll celebrate her birthday there too. The agent starts thinking about the fertility of Shounen women. Maybe Burmy is trying to go against her own nature. The princess's official car arrives at Gondiak station. Bradley asks to know exactly where they are. Princess Burmy stands up from her seat. They enter a huge mirrored building in central Seoul. The agent asks the princess if she scheduled her visit in advance. Burmy replies saying no, she did that on purpose. At the top of the building, no one is expecting any princess. They're all panicking because the princess will be upstairs in 5 minutes. The princess is eager to collect ancient evil and unclaimed debts. That's the real reason she came to Earth. The car with the other agents arrives at the Central Seoul building. The employees are caught off guard by this unexpected visit. Everyone gets in position to receive the Honorable Princess Burmy of Galanko. It seems she really does have heavy security protocol. No one expected her to want to be in Gongdaeok. It seems none of those people know the real reason behind her visit. Princess Burmy arrives, imposing. Everyone looks up and is shocked by her size. She looks down to get a better view of them, and lets out a loud scream demanding they bring the president to her immediately. Lee Min-jun admires the height of the building. The building they're in the center of Seoul, is the Goryeo Precision Pension. The agent thinks to himself that in that company, the CEO tends to travel abroad frequently. Bradley looks at his watch and says he should be arriving soon. He listens carefully and seems to hear something. Facing the door, he hears some footsteps and says he's here. The presidential office door opens. A short old man with a cane arrives, apologizing to the princess for being late. Man Sik looks forward and is startled by what he sees. Someone calls for our agent at that moment and asks him to wait outside while he and Princess Burmy talk alone. Bradley and Lee Min-jun grow bored from waiting too long. Silent as he waits, our friend reflects on the difficult times companies have been facing lately. However, he never imagined that Man Sik would be in debt to the Shutanian princess. Lee Min-jun opens his phone at that moment and starts looking for some numbers in his contact list. The agent thinks of a way to help the CEO because he seems too old to make such difficult decisions alone. Even though it's not his job, this goes beyond his duty. He'll help him the way a great friend from the past would, and then thank the heavens for the sign. On the floor above Lee Min-jun's friend's library, Kathy receives some instructions from our agent. The agent waits leaning against the wall outside the room. It seems the negotiation atmosphere inside is in full swing. Princess Burmy looks at Man Sik. The CEO kisses the princess's hand as a sign of respect. Burmy says that now that he's done his part, he can pay her what he owes. The man immediately offers to make the payment. On TV, the news announces that the company's stock closed the day in collapse. An old man watches footage of his company operating many years ago and believes he can overcome the crisis with a lot of effort and hard work. But one fine day, someone knocks on the door bringing a solution to his problems. Man Sik looks at the tempting proposal on the paper. The product was a super powerful filter that extracts gold through alchemy. The CEO says the proposal is good, but he's too broke to afford it. The representative says he can pay once the profits start coming in. However, even so, the situation of the gold company didn't improve, and the debts just kept piling up. More money went out than came in, until one day Man Sik receives a call that leaves him desperate. He no longer knew what to do to recover his finances. At that moment, Princess Burmy took over the gold filter company, and now Man Sik is in the hands of the Shutanian princess. Burmy starts shouting loudly, demanding that the payment to her company be made immediately. The CEO says the numbers still aren't enough to cover the full payment. Angry, the princess says if he doesn't pay, he'll have to face the consequences. The old man panics and asks what the consequences are. Olga walks over and hands him some papers to read. Man Sik starts reading from top to bottom, one by one, and begins to sweat. He doesn't understand why a Shutanian race would be interested in an alchemy company. Princess Burmy replies saying that's not his concern. The CEO panics over the ownership transfer contract. Burmy says she'll talk to lawyers across different dimensions to make sure everything is done properly. She walks up to the old man and asks for his decision. Go bankrupt or give it all up. Burmy says there's no way out. Man Sik lowers his head and begs for some time to think. The princess says she'll return tomorrow at the same time. Burmy tells Olga that she's really hungry, and the translator says she'll bring something for her to eat. She brings the princess a bucket full of fresh meat. The Shutanian eats the whole thing with great satisfaction. She bites each piece with intense appetite, while a strong smell rises into the air inside the car. Lee Min-jun tries to identify what kind of smell that is. He says there's something mixed in with the scent of the meat. That was the princess's scent, but the agent notices that it's not the scent of Shutanian pheromones. It smells more like what insects use to communicate. The scent is similar, but not exactly the same as the Shutan race. It seems like a wild mix of different odors. Princess Burmy finishes her meal very satisfied. Suddenly, Agent Lee Min-jun jumps toward her mouth. He tries to get a close look inside. The princess is stunned, but at the same time, she's terribly flustered and delighted by the agent's touch. She closes her eyes and gets her mouth ready to try and kiss him. The agent looks at the scene in utter disgust. He screams for Olga and asks her to order the princess to open her mouth. Olga watches everything and simply agrees. The translator gives the command for Princess Burmy to open her mouth. The sky suddenly darkens. The driver of the princess's car gets startled and asks what that is. A massive swarm of insects fills the avenue, countless bugs coming fast in their direction. Lee Min-jun looks on in despair, realizing he's fallen into a trap. The insect swarm attacks the car. The driver screams and loses control of the vehicle. Olga panics. The agent realizes at that moment that they're coming. The insects crash into the official car, causing a massive impact. The swarm that hit the official car was made up of Manhwa wasps. That type of wasp isn't normal. It has its entire body covered in strong metal. When it attacks, it brings with it a cloud of flammable plasma. Many of those wasps attacked Princess Burmy's official car. The car was left in pieces, completely destroyed. White smoke was coming out from all sides, and from inside, a shadow emerges. Our agent flies through the air carrying the princess in his arms. From above, he looks down and sees that Olga was seriously injured by the attack. Lee Min-jun feels very sad seeing what happened to Olga. As he flies with the princess in his arms, the swarm tries to chase him. The agent creates a shield with his shadow around the princess, scaring the wasps away. He starts to think he won't be able to handle this on his own. At that moment, he begins to recite dark magic incantations. The entire swarm goes after them. He decides to end it once and for all, and creates a fireball around them in midair. The fire spreads among the swarm. The outer shell of the creatures is metal, but perhaps the inside is not. The wasps begin to explode, one by one. However, some still seem to survive. He creates a shadow shield once again, and while there's fire blazing in the sky on one side, he protects the princess on the other. The agent can't believe the wasps aren't all exploding. Many of them are still coming at them with full force. Those that seem to have exploded appear to come back to life. In the sky, an endless battle takes place. Bradley shouts to the sky, telling Lee Min-jun that their target is the princess. He replies that he knows that but must protect her. However, in that case, he flies at incredible speed with the princess to another location. She panics from all the turbulence in the air. The agent grabs her by the tail, saying he can't fight while protecting her. He needs to find a safe place to leave her for now. He looks down and spots a safe place. He looks and remembers that Donchul's library has a protective shield. Inside the library, everything seems calm until the elf starts to hear a sound from outside. Lee Min-jun lands with force. The elf looks up, sure of the sound he just heard. The agent raises his hand and a light of golden magic forms. Through that magic, he will place a very strong protective shield there. A brilliant explosion occurs at that moment. Lee Min-jun looks and realizes his protective shield is working. The wasps start slamming hard against the shield. That shield is protecting the entire library building. From inside, Lee Min-jun looks out to make sure the shield is still holding. Burmy starts screaming and the elf asks the agent what she's saying. Min-jun says he doesn't know what she's saying and apologizes for the sudden chaos. The elf says it's fine, but Donchul got really scared. The agent walks back and forth, thinking of ways to fix the situation. Meanwhile, he needs to find a way to understand what Princess Burmy is saying. He uses his telepathy to speak with her and asks her to calm down. She screams in desperation. The agent tells her to shut up and asks if she did anything that might have attracted the wasps. Her body has several points that release different pheromones. No other Shounen woman seems to emit the same kind of scent. Maybe she touched something different that caused her to release that specific scent. She starts saying things to the agent as if she understood what he said. Lee Min-jun thinks of another way to try to understand her speech. The elf asks the agent if he needs a translator, and he says yes. He asks Donchul to get something from the garage. The agent can't believe what he's about to do. Donchul returns with the item he requested in his hands. He's bringing with him the intelligent frying pan. Lee Min-jun is startled, and he's a bit reluctant about them using the frying pan at that moment. The elf says he doesn't need to worry. She'll be able to help. The agent says he won't take responsibility for the perverted things she might say. Donchul looks at the frying pan. In the past, Jeonpal asked Lee Min-jun what the frying pan was saying. The frying pan said it could translate any language. He didn't need to worry about translation. He picks up the frying pan, and she says she's really excited to see him again. The frying pan looks at our friend and lets out a loud scream of happiness. The swarm of wasps is held back by the protective shield. Princess Burmy holds the frying pan in her hand. Lee Min-jun asks the princess if she had any contact with someone or touched anything unusual that day. He asks the frying pan to translate what he said. The frying pan starts translating to the princess what the agent said. After she understands, she becomes frightened. She starts screaming something strange, very loudly. Burmy screams so loudly that the agent covers his ears. He looks at the princess and asks her to calm down. The agent places his hand over hers. The princess becomes extremely happy and embarrassed by the gesture. Lee Min-jun asks her not to be shy and to calmly answer what he asked. He waits until she stops being embarrassed. The frying pan translates that she said she's very embarrassed and apologizes for the awkwardness. Then it begins translating lots of unnecessary information. Lee Min-jun loses his patience and says he's been waiting over 3 minutes for the answer. The frying pan starts repeating everything he said. She says she'll carry the strength of his hands with her forever. Lee Min-jun picks up the phone and looks for a solution to the problem. He notices several messages and calls have come in on the phone. The agent tells Kathy that it would be nice if she let him know she's alive from time to time. He says that in emergencies, he needs her to answer the phone. The agent asks if she at least saw who the people calling were. She says she didn't answer so she wouldn't have to explain to others what he was doing. Lee Min-jun says he can't take getting more calls from the government with problems for him to solve. He asks Kathy if she knows about the government's race database. Companies need to send data to the government about their employees' races. Basically, it shows that most companies only employ humans and elves. However, the agent suspects there could be human supremacist companies. Most humans find elves beautiful and useful, but not other races. They might hate the other races because of their color, size, shape, or maybe because they reproduce too much. Or maybe the person behind this attack was CEO Unmasking. The agent turns to Princess Burmy and asks if she can now answer what he asked. He places his hand over hers and asks her to answer quickly. The frying pan says she didn't touch anything but had contact with humans. Lee Min-jun asks who it was and tells her to give him names. First she says the agent touched her several times kindly, and he gets furious. Then she says there was one more person, and Lee Min-jun says he needs to know who it was. She tells him, and at that moment, our agent took a deep breath at her answer. Kathy gets curious and asks what the frying pan said. He puts his hands over his face and doesn't know how to respond. A black car moves through the streets of the city. Inside, Bradley sits comfortably using the phone. He's speaking with Lee Min-jun, who says he's safe and asks him to investigate who's behind the attack. The agent asks his American friend to use his special abilities. One of his abilities is clairvoyance and seeing beyond things. Inside the car, he asks the driver to turn right. Now everyone will want to solve the mystery of the attack together. Bradley seems quite confident that he'll be able to give an answer for this case. He thinks that maybe by solving this case, he can earn a lot of Adelines and bonuses. The last payment he received was 10,000 Adelines. Last time he got 70,000 less than the others. He is absolutely sure that when he recovers his memories, he'll do things differently than Telisia. Bradley tells the driver to head toward the building after the tunnel. He feels something is there. From the car, they see the end of the tunnel. They pass through an underground parking garage and keep going to reach where the American is pointing. They arrive at a location, and the American steps out of the car, followed by several security guards. They look ahead and are startled. Right in front of them appears a faceless person with a long white cloak. A security guard asks the American if that's the one who ordered the attack, because he was just standing there alone. It seems that person was actually waiting for them. The figure starts reciting a spell, and a red light shoots from the tip of his finger. Bradley is terrified by what he sees. He looks at it and asks what she was doing there. He looks at the security guards and tells everyone to run as fast as they can. As everyone runs, a beam of red light appears. The person unleashes smoke and red lightning everywhere. The security guards look terrified. Suddenly, a blonde woman appears from under the cloak, laughing at it all. The agent's black car speeds through the streets of Seoul. Lee Min-jun looks at a business card while sitting in the back seat. As he stares at it, a movie starts playing in his head. He starts to remember the troll lawyer who spoke with him a few days ago. Could that lawyer have been representing Unmasking? Did he kiss Princess Burmy's hand to deflect suspicion that he may have been behind the attack? Many questions run through our agent's mind. The car arrives at its destination. Unmasking reads an important paper inside his office. It's the transfer document for 100% of the company to Princess Burmy. The CEO thinks about what life will be like for the workers after he's gone. What will Korea's position be among the gold-producing nations? What will the world be like for the homeland, for the people, and most of all, for the humans? Unmasking angrily crumples up the transfer contract. At that moment, the CEO begins to think about the deal he made, and how production now depends entirely on extraterrestrial products. It was all a trap set by aliens to steal space on Earth. He throws the paper into the trash bin. He sits comfortably in his armchair, leans his back into the chair, trying to relax a bit. Suddenly, he's startled by someone interrupting his thoughts. A masked man appears, saying he's had his eye on Goryeo Precision Alchemy for a long time. He looks at the CEO and makes him a proposal to work together. That masked man is a representative of the Human Rights Society, and his goal is to wipe out the aliens. He asks Unmasking if he doesn't find it strange that the princess visited Korea before other countries. The masked man says if he agrees to a deal, everything will be done in total secrecy. No evidence will be left behind, so he doesn't need to worry. As the two shake hands, the masked man says he'll take care of everything. That masked man promised to handle the debts and finance the entire company from now on. It seems that gives Unmasking hope that he can remain in charge of the company. Suddenly, the phone rings. Startled, the CEO doesn't understand what the problem is at that moment. When he answers the phone, someone on the other end says something bad just happened. There are immigration officers waiting for him on the first floor. The agents head into the building to conduct a full search. Among them is our special agent, Lee Min-jun. Man-sik remains seated in his office chair. He begins trembling in his seat, not understanding why this is happening. A portal of bright green light opens at his fingertips. If they catch him, they'll interrogate Man-sik until he's worn out from talking. So he decides to handle this problem with his own hands. He brings a green goo full of spells to his mouth as if to swallow it, until the office doors burst open, and he's suddenly frozen in place, bound by ropes. He looks around, not understanding how this is happening. Lee Min-jun appears, saying he already knows Man-sik was behind the Manhwa Wasp attack. He looks ahead and says the CEO is going to tell them everything about the Human Rights Society. Man-sik asks for time to think, but our agent refuses. He says that from that moment on, his rights as a Korean citizen are suspended. The CEO asks why he's siding with the aliens instead of the humans. During the 7th mass immigration, humans accepted the elves without complaining. He yells at the agent, asking why he's on the side of those monsters. Humans welcome the elves. Why are they now being hostile? Lee Min-jun has part of himself as an elf in Earth's dimension. Man-sik was a human supremacist. He hated racial mixing. Our agent asks why he cooperated with the Human Rights Society. The society's plan is to exterminate all non-human races from Earth. Lee Min-jun asks if he has any idea how badly the society treats other species. The CEO looks at the agent and says he sees no problem with it. He shouts at the agent, saying he doesn't care how they're treated, because they're not human. Our friend can't believe the things he's hearing. He says he's going to interrogate him, but not interrogate him like a human. He's going to interrogate him like a dragon would. Only dragons can use horrifying magical powers without being blocked by the human mind. With that, all of his memories will be revealed. At that moment, other agents take the CEO out of the room. He will be kept in isolation to prevent him from doing anything to himself before being judged by a dragon. As he leaves the room, Lee Min-jun opens his phone. He answers a call and asks what the problem is. The one calling him was the elf secretary from Jenkinson's company, Blair. He listens attentively to everything she says. It's raining heavily in the city center, and police sirens are blaring. The agent arrives at a damp and dark place with the secretary. He asks Blair if she checked the information he requested. She says yes. She says Agent Bradley's soul escaped and is no longer there. The council is able to transfer a soul from one body to another, but it's not easy and takes a long time. Lee Min-jun looks at the scene and feels sad. Agent Bradley no longer had his soul in the destroyed body. Suddenly, a soul from beyond appears before the agent and asks if he liked the bouquet of flowers she made for him. Suddenly, she vanishes, leaving behind a trail of red light. Who could be behind that magical red smoke? The agent looks up, searching for answers. It seems she wanted the agent to see her. At that moment, Lee Min-jun punches the ground in anger. Was she satisfied with what she had done? Our friend's eyes turned red like fire, and in that moment, he vows to end this before she ends him. The agent looks at the secretary and says they need to send Burmy back to her dimension. He knows Jenkinson closed the dimensional terminal, but the princess needs an exception right now. If she stays on Earth, she could end up being eliminated by the Human Rights Society. The entire situation seems to be far worse than he imagined. It's better not to risk people's lives while they still don't have a solution to this problem. They need to put a definitive end to this game of cat and mouse. The agent steps forward and says he's the only one who can truly keep Burmy safe, but asks Blair to send her back as fast as possible. He doesn't want to just keep protecting the princess because he needs to catch those behind this problem. At that moment, in another dimension, two men talk about the things happening on Earth. Jenkinson asks his assistant to be clearer about what he means. He says the fold remained intact despite the 5-dimensional jumps, with only one fold left before reaching Earth. But with just one fold remaining, it collapsed. Jenkinson tells him to fix the problem. The committee has many issues to address on Earth from now on. The assistant says he's trying to fix it when Jenkinson grabs the tablet from his hand. He says he can't believe what he's seeing, until something very interesting catches his attention. He doesn't understand why that race is heading to Earth alone. His assistant says he's receiving a message from Secretary Blair on Earth. He passes it to his boss, hoping for good news from there. Blair Campbell appears as a hologram in the president's chamber. She says she needs to make an important request, and Jenkinson tells her she may speak. Blair tells the president everything that happened while he was in another dimension. She runs to our friend and says she got the approval he asked for. Out of breath, she says she explained the whole situation to the president, and after much pleading, he allowed her to take Burmy back to her planet. Immediately, the agent makes a call to get that arranged. He asks for Princess Burmy and her bodyguards to be taken back immediately. They must be heavily escorted via teleportation, and the proper teleportation location is Yeonjongdo International Airport. The location has a VIP room that's tracked and heavily guarded by the Korean army. In the VIP room, Burmy uses the smart frying pan. They talk about many different subjects. The frying pan is able to translate everything the princess says in real time. She asks Burmy what relationships are like outside of Earth. Yi Minjun wonders how it's possible for a frying pan to talk so much. He also thinks about how he's going to miss his friend from other dimensions. Maybe if Bradley had known how to translate, he could escape that situation. The frying pan starts to tremble something toward him, and he stops to listen. It seems Princess Burmy wants to say something to our friend. He places his hand over the princess's hand that's holding the frying pan. The princess said she managed to hear what happened. She says his friend is gone, and she feels guilty for it. She looks at him and offers her most sincere apologies. Yi Minjun says it wasn't her fault at all. The princess says she felt the tension between all the races during that battle and never imagined something like that could happen. He says these attacks have been expected ever since the 7th mass immigration to Earth. Burmy says she understands what he means. She says that in Galanko, there were also many mass immigrations over the years. Many races attacked each other and suffered heavily through wars between them. Unfortunately, that often happens when different people are in the same place. Blair interrupts the conversation, and the agent asks what happened. She says the transport will need to wait a few more hours because they need to adjust some safety details for everyone. It seems there's excess weight among those being transported through the portal. At that moment, Burmy whispers something to Yi Minjun, and Blair doesn't understand anything. She says she bought some jewels that she would like to bring with her. But Blair says she can't risk her life for objects, so they must be left behind. The secretary says everything will be ready in a few hours. Suddenly, a loud noise is heard by all three in the room. A thunderous sound shakes the entire airport. People are dazed and start wondering what that could be. A man puts both hands on his face and panics when he sees his skin melting. One of the agents shouts that it's poison seeping into his pores. Outside the room, everyone begins to scream in despair. Yi Minjun looks ahead and activates his soul eyes. He can sense that she's coming toward him. Not just her, but an entire army of zombies from another dimension. The poison and the zombies are just part of the scene. She says she had been waiting eagerly for this meeting with Yi Minjun. Desperate screams echo throughout the airport. Thick red fluid drips onto the floor. One of the agents asks for some to run and find the antidote while others go treat the wounds. The agent looks at that horrible scene and is overwhelmed. He lies on the floor to help another injured agent. The agent's name is Carl Hood, originally from South Africa. Another special elf agent asks if he's noticed the strange things that have been happening. He replies that he hasn't. She says she had never seen anything like what happened to Agent Bradley before. Those terrible things were all caused by heavy dark magic, according to the elf. Carl says that kind of dark magic power definitely comes from past generations. Once you get involved with those forces, you never break free from them. The elf says they'll be okay, no matter what. Yi Minjun appears with his dagger in hand, ready for combat. Our agent has completed many missions with older dragons. Some bombs are launched and strike the zombies directly. Many are launched at once in an attempt to contain the enemy army. The special agents call for reinforcements from the base. One of them grabs the phone to try to call for backup, but he can't because the phone hits the ground with no signal. The battle between worlds continues at the airport. Carl holds his special weapon aimed directly at the zombies. There's only one bridge in and out of Yeonjongdo. Since teleportation won't be possible at that moment, they'll have to shake the zombies off somehow. Carl picks up the phone and calls for immediate help. He says the situation is far from ideal right now. Blair looks at Yi Minjun and asks what they should do now. He tells her to take the Shootens to the teleportation cabin while he talks to the committee about what's happening. He says the situation is an emergency. The secretary looks at him, worried about what he's going to do. The agent says the president won't be happy about it, but he's in another dimension and can't fix this problem now. Blair asks how he knows that, and he replies that he just knows. He's on a ship in another dimension, which is why Blair has permission to make urgent decisions on Earth. She can press a blue button that activates the dimensional distortion permission mode. However, that can only be done in emergencies and only by Blair in his absence. The secretary gets angry because that was supposed to be a secret. Yi Minjun goes to the window and speaks on the phone. He asks who the person was that they were talking about on the call and says he knows who it is. All agents must immediately go and escort the princess's teleportation. Not just hers, but that of all the Shutanians. Yi Minjun tells Blair that he himself will escort the princess safely. Burmy starts screaming at the agent nonstop. She says she agrees to leave, but has one condition. The princess must meet him again in the future. Yi Minjun steps outside the airport and suddenly jumps and flies into the sky. From above, he observes everything happening below. He activates his special eye to better see what's going on. His eyes lock onto the one responsible for all the chaos. At that moment, she promises she's going to end that person. She says this mess reminds her of the old days. Back then, the agent fought dragons, now it's just the two of them. She calls him a parasite that feeds off dragons and says she'll destroy him with real dark magic. Our agent grabs his magical dagger and cuts his own hand. He clenches his fist as the red viscous liquid starts dripping. Lee Min-jun says he's going to end Theo Christensen once and for all. The battle begins, and the agent is trapped by a zombie mountain. A red light reflects off all those monsters, and Lee Min-jun emerges from the middle of them. He looks at Theo and asks if that's all she knows how to do. Theo feels challenged and says if he insists, she can do more. She casts a brilliant light, like fire, in the agent's direction. Theo says she created dark spells never seen before just to defeat Lee Min-jun. She won't let him go without making him experience them one by one. A massive explosion of magic and spells hits right above Lee Min-jun. Theo watches the explosion satisfied. Suddenly, our friend appears walking through the smoke. She doesn't understand how he managed to escape all that magic. Lee Min-jun says he warned her. That was all she could do. Furious, she prepares for a new attack because something went wrong. She can't believe her special magic didn't work on him. Theo thought she was prepared to face Lee Min-jun, but that magic doesn't seem enough to stop our friend. In the last month, not a single day went by without her winning a battle. She made countless sacrifices to make this work. Theo fires a red dark magic beam at the agent, but once again, it seems to fail. The agent remains unharmed, not even scratched by Theo's magic. Our agent is stronger and more unbeatable than ever. Theo Christensen was a religious name chosen by her parents, but contrary to the name, which means gift from God, Theo does many evil things using dark magic. In a slum in the center of Europe, some goblins beg for food and water because they are starving. Theo says they can follow her, as she will help them. She shuts the door with all the goblins inside. That mysterious place wasn't meant to help any orc or goblin. It was a lab where she used them as sacrifices for dark magic. The goblin looks at her with tears in his eyes and asks about the food she promised. She looks at the little goblin and strikes him. Since then, many goblins and orcs have gone missing from that place. There are protests saying many of them have disappeared, and the government does nothing to find them. Activists say that all beings deserve respect and dignity. The whole population will be at a disadvantage if there are no more goblins and orcs to help them. Human extremists say the streets look clean without those monsters. They insist that society won't function well without them until someone bumps into the movement leader's shoulder. It's Theo, completely filthy, with sacrifice marks all over her body. The activist looks at her in fear. Theo keeps walking and says that having no goblins or orcs is great for her. If no one misses them, she can perform her dark magic freely. Dragons fly over the islands of Korea. Outside, army agents decide to raid and say that Theo Christensen was at the location. It seems she eliminated everyone else. The dragons ask Lee Min-jun about Theo, and he says he'll continue the investigation. The army agents find a horrific scene inside the house and say she escaped. The dragon says they will place Theo on the international most wanted list. Black boots run through the streets. Theo Christensen looks tired from so much walking. She says she overdid it with the number of orcs and goblins she sacrificed, thinking no one would miss them. A major economic problem occurred due to the disappearance of the orcs. This caused a serious issue for the country's business. In the slums, a light rain falls. Two orcs walk around talking about the recent events. At that moment, a hand picks up a dirty newspaper from the ground. Theo reads the latest news, hidden beneath a cloak. She sees her picture in the newspaper saying she is one of the most wanted in the world. At that moment, she swears she'll do everything to bring down Lee Min-jun, because it was because of him that everything in her life collapsed. Theo began preparing her revenge, and for that, she needed more sacrifices and power. For that, she had to join the secret human rights society. In an abandoned house in the middle of nowhere, Theo talks on the phone saying she's going to capture Princess Burmy. She received the mission from the Human Rights Society and was willing to fulfill it. At the same time, she would get her revenge on Lee Min-jun. Inside the abandoned warehouse, she opens her arms and thanks for all that power. She was chosen to be the strongest and received a gift from the heavens. Disappointed, Theo says it can't be happening. She screams loudly, saying she sacrificed many monsters for it to work. Suddenly, she is struck by a bolt of lightning in the chest. Lee Min-jun raises one of his hands, filled with magic. Theo falls to the ground with a massive hole in her chest. She gets up asking how he managed to escape her dark magic. Theo says she sacrificed everything for that moment. She says he shouldn't even be there anymore. The woman screams that he sold his soul to the dragons. Christensen stands before Lee Min-jun and asks what his secret is to true dark magic. The agent grabs his dagger and cuts his hand again, and says that now he will use true dark magic on her. She looks at the agent in despair, and says she won't let him use dark magic without using hers in return. Theo raises one of her hands and begins to transform. She places both hands against her chest, and says she will also use true dark magic. The zombies advance, consumed by dark magic, with their green eyes glowing. The Shoutanians run escorting the princess along with Secretary Blair. Carl gets ready to help however he can. He grabs some bullets and blesses them with elemental fire to try to stop them. The agent charges at all those zombies with great force. He ends up completely out of ammo. Everyone cheers for Agent Carl's brave act. One of the agents puts a hand on his shoulder and says he did well against the zombies, but he asks them not to celebrate yet. Amid all that fire, the zombies keep advancing. How many zombies could there be in that place? It seems like there are a lot. Blair tears up a magical contract. She asks the Shoutanians if they need any detoxification before departure. She's worried because they're very close to the portal. The secretary wonders what they'll do, as it's impossible to cross the poisonous mist. At that moment, a scroll drops in front of them. Carl throws Blair his protection scroll and says they'll need it more than he does. Blair looks at Carl and deeply thanks him for the gesture. She runs with the Shoutanians toward the portal. Once there, there's a large sealed electronic door. Blair begins opening the door. She looks back and asks Princess Burmy to go in first. Meanwhile, the agents fight bravely to try to stop the advance of the zombie army. Suddenly, Carl starts coughing up a viscous liquid. Out of energy, he collapses to the ground. Burmy orders one of the Shoutans to go and help the agent. The Shoutanian agent picks Carl up in his arms and runs through the fire into the portal. Lying on the ground, Blair looks at him and says he was exposed to the toxic smoke for too long. Even though trolls are resilient, they can't remain exposed for too long. Blair says she will take care of the controls at the portal and asks them to take care of Agent Carl. She tries to connect the entire machine to the Galenko dimension. She takes a few steps forward. The Shoutanians look around wondering if something might have gone wrong. Blair's body is engulfed by a bright blue light. She starts working on other machines, and at that moment, she activates the special code. From there, they begin traveling through dimensions inside that metal box. Everything starts lighting up and making a different sound. Normal people can't hear it, but Elds can. Blair says it's like one of President Jenkinson's treasures. Below her is the cargo compartment. She says now they have to wait a few hours until the dimensional shift is complete. Blair looks at the agent and says that in the meantime there will be no life signs. Usually before departure, a thorough inspection of the cargo must be done, but in emergencies that's not possible. The most important thing at that moment is, the secretary yells at everyone, saying she needs to check the cargo. The Shoutanians look at her without understanding a single word she says. They wonder if anyone among them can translate what Blair is saying. Burmy is holding the smart frying pan in her hands. The secretary says they can't leave until she checks the entire cargo. She looks around and says someone needs to help her. Agent Carl is unfortunately too injured for that. The other agents are too busy trying to keep the zombies away. There's no one left who can help. Agent Shoutan places his hand on Blair's shoulder and asks what she's doing. The secretary turns around, and it seems there's no one in that place who can help her. Lee Min-jun fights bravely in the middle of the great battle. Theo Christensen gets injured, and red spheres of dark magic begin to pour out from her. The agent looks and thinks it's the most insane thing he's ever seen in his entire life. Theo is transforming into something terrifying before his eyes. She says her dream is to live forever, learning about dark magic. In that moment, she doesn't feel pain anymore. But her real dream is to make Lee Min-jun feel a lot of pain. She will make him pay for everything for the rest of his life. A few hours later, in a different dimension, a space monster is looking at some information on a virtual screen. A person arrives and asks for permission to speak. The monster apologizes, saying it was focused on work. She says she came to receive her dimensional jump commands. The monster says everything is ready for her jump, but at the moment, Earth's portals are blocked for both entry and exit. He says she'll probably need to wait a bit. But if she wants to go now, they can't control what body she might end up in. Excited, she says she doesn't care where she'll land. He tells her to just wait a moment. The monster looks at the screen with its eye and gets startled when it sees a file of a supposed human who looks very strange. He thanks her for waiting and gives her a chip with the necessary information. The woman heads off to her destination while the little monster wishes her good luck in the new dimension. He just reminds her that the transport she'll take is not a normal flight, so it hasn't been registered in the destination dimension yet. She says she understands the commands. That woman's name was Dell, ex-wife of Lee Min-jun. The man looks at a screen filled with photos. Director G receives a call that will report some recent events. He listens to someone explaining the entire situation happening at the airport at that moment. Since the Wasp attack failed, they've been trying to act through other means. That was an isolated situation, and the call also mentions the warehouse on Mount Bukansan. Director G asks the person to be more direct. The person says that President Jenkinson's warehouse was robbed, right after they tried to steal it. It seems someone set everything on fire at Mount Bukansan to gain access. Director G reflects on what's being said, and asks how that happened at the same time the brothers were entering the house. The timing is too close. The director gets angry and crushes the wine glass in his hand. He says he feels used by President Jenkinson's aliens. At that moment, Blair has something pointed at her head. Burmy tells her to shut up and give her the password. The secretary is shocked at how quickly the princess learned to speak her language. The princess tells her to be quick, unless she wants a hole in her head. She yells that Blair is too slow. Carl, in pain on the ground, is also shocked that the princess can now communicate so well. So why did she need an official translator? She could speak the language the whole time but was pretending. The secretary begins typing something into the computer. Burmy says she'll mess up that pretty face of Blair if she takes too long. Blair starts to think that everything the princess said and did was a lie. In truth, she didn't want to settle her debts with the gold company. She just wanted to diversify her income sources, because their goal is to conquer Earth through mass migration. However, Blair knows that no one on Earth will welcome this mass immigration, especially after they treated her like cattle. They have no chance of success in Galanko, because gold holds no value there. But then why does she want to steal President Jenkinson's treasure now? There are many things Blair could think about Burmy, but one of them is this. If she goes to Galanko with that much gold, it will be the end of the line for her. Blair doesn't want to do it, but there's no time left to think it over. An explosion happens, a beam of light flies over the airport, and Blair asks for it to go straight to Yiminjun. The agent is locked in an endless battle against Theo Christensen. He yells with a ball of magic in his hand, saying she's nothing but a big sack of crap. Then he throws that massive magic ball at her. Everything around them seems to be going up in flames, until a tornado forms and charges toward Yi Minjun. Theo sacrificed her body and all her life energy in one final act of dark magic. She created an extremely powerful dark spell. The Wasps rush toward the agent with brutal force. However, Yi Minjun knows they won't be able to stop him, but he also knows he won't be able to stop that many Wasps, so they'll advance into the city and leave everything in ashes. The agent looks and starts to panic, because he knows he can't stop them alone. Since President Jenkinson left Earth, he hasn't been able to call on any other dragon for help. At that moment, the agent receives a message from Blair coming from another dimension. However, he can't help because he has to deal with the Wasps. What he needs to do is at the very least sacrifice his weapons. He looks up and is frightened. The agent doesn't understand what's happening in the sky at that moment. Yi Minjun opens his eyes and panics. He can't believe he's in the middle of very powerful, never-before-seen dark magic. Tentacles begin emerging from the skies. The committee agents look up without understanding what's happening. The agent asks why they are on Earth. A beam of light shines above. Yi Minjun starts thinking. After becoming a prisoner, he lost his memories, and now someone has told him about something he did but doesn't remember. Now our friend stood face to face with an ancient species called Endelian. Yi Minjun is right in front of that massive monster, face to face. He wonders how an Endelian managed to enter Earth's dimension. Many questions crossed our friend's mind at that moment. The Endelian was an enormous, giant monster with only one eye. Its eye locked directly onto our agent. At that moment, a cloud of wasps begins to form. They fly at incredible speed. There are many of them, and they seem fully locked onto their target. That scene looked like an apocalypse taking place in Seoul. Flying through the apocalyptic skies, Yi Minjun notices something strange. In the center of the hurricane, something catches his attention. The eye of the storm was a sort of dark place where any souls that fell in would never return. That detail intrigued our friend, but what intrigued him even more was that eye was marking each of the insects and pulling them in without causing any damage around it. It was extremely dangerous to get near it. Yi Minjun was almost certain he wouldn't be able to make any kind of deal with that giant thing. Suddenly, a golden light strikes the agent right in his stomach. He looks down and doesn't understand what it could be. It was a small spirit with a strange appearance. The spirit looks at Yi Minjun and asks for help. It was a message from Princess Burmy. The agent stares at the little creature flying through the air. He bites his lip and gets angry at all the Shutanians. The war seems endless. The committee agent army attacks the zombies. One of the agents looks at the entire scene and asks what in the world is going on. His partner tells him to stay focused on holding back the zombies. The zombies are relentlessly advancing toward Princess Burmy. Suddenly, something starts emerging from the atmosphere. It's a ship that seems to be entering a new dimension. Someone shows up to help, landing in the center of the battlefield. It's our friend Yi Minjun, and right behind him is the zombie army. He fills himself with energy and unleashes a powerful attack on the zombies, wiping out most of them. The other agents breathe a sigh of relief because it seems someone stronger has come to help them. Yi Minjun looks at the agents and tells them to stop the ship that's crossing over with the Shutanians. Out of nowhere, something strange happens. A strong white light engulfs the entire airport. Endelian seems to have vanished. Our friend looks around, wondering what is going on. A voice speaks to him from the sky, asking where he's rushing off to. A woman appears, walking toward him. In that insane moment, our friend can't react at all. He just looks at the woman and says she hasn't changed at all over the years. Dell introduces herself and says she missed him. He asks how she managed to get there, and Dell replies that she arrived on a dimensional fold ship, so it was her on that ship that had requested to stop. The agent thinks those questions aren't really important right now. It looks like the real ship is about to deform. Yi Minjun looks at Dell and apologizes, saying he can't talk right now. She gets irritated and grabs his arm tightly. Dell says they'd gone so many years without seeing each other, and now he can't even give her a little attention. The agent looks around, not believing how much insanity is happening all at once. He pulls his arm away from her hand and apologizes again. Lee Min-jun runs off, saying he'll come back soon to talk to her. Del is upset by all of it. He runs to try and contain the ship. She watches what's happening. The agent runs like never before in his life to try and stop it. Suddenly, he's frightened by what he sees. Del asks what's wrong with him. Is that dimensional fold ship more important than the two of them? At that moment, someone throws tentacles toward the ship. They wrap around it tightly. Lee Min-jun looks and becomes desperate, wondering why Del has tentacles. She asks what his problem is with that ship. Why is he ignoring her like that? In 60 seconds, the ship will enter another dimension. As the countdown begins, everyone sits and adjusts in their seats. Burmy seems pleased with how everything turned out. Finally, the Shoutens will become the dominant race on Earth. A voice in the darkness asks what she thinks of using Earth's outskirts as an asylum. She only needs to pay the appropriate price. Normally, help from the council would be required, but the Galenko species can easily overpower the others. Burmy asks what price must be paid. The price is very simple. She must visit Earth as often as possible. Every time she does, they'll send a jump ship to deliver various items in her name to her first destination. While the Shoutanians patiently wait for their first dimensional jump, Blair wonders where the agent is. Princess Burmy is calm and excited. The secretary can't believe this is really happening. Suddenly, a red light appears inside the ship. Burmy wonders what is going on. Tentacles grab the ship from the outside. They pull everyone back to the Seoul airport. Several tentacles emerge from Del's back. With her hands covering her eyes, she calls out to Lee Min-jun. She looks at him with angry eyes and asks if that ship was more important than her. The agent stares, completely confused by what's happening. Those tentacles coming out of her are the same as Adelines. Lee Min-jun looks at her and asks what she has to do with that giant monster. Del says that monster is her. She managed to recover her old body and memories, but she came there in that body and those clothes to see him again, in the same form she had when they first met. However, our agent only has eyes for that ship. The Shoutanians on board fall into a panic, not understanding what is happening. Del looks at the ship and asks what's inside it. Lee Min-jun begs her to please stop immediately. She stares at the ship and splits it in half with one of her tentacles. The Shoutanians fall out and are flung through the air in despair. Lee Min-jun's wife raises one of her hands and holds everything still in the sky. She says the agent doesn't need to worry, everything is safe. Del looks sweetly and asks what that was all about. Then her expression changes and she asks why that is making him so nervous. The agent gets worried. Could Del be about to destroy everything? He asks her what she thinks she's doing with all this drama. She says she hopes to be the only one in his life. Shoutens aren't his type, and neither are trolls. Blair is flying through the air, desperate. She looks down. She calls out to Lee Min-jun and begs him to help her. She had been waiting anxiously for him. The agent looks at her and says she's screwed for saying those words. He screams desperately, telling Del that Blair wasn't the kind of woman he was into. Del says it's fine, she didn't mean to hurt the secretary. She just wants to take a closer look at her face. At that moment, a giant red eye locks onto Blair. She screams in despair. The agent looks at it all and gets nervous. He yells at Del saying that wasn't Blair, it was another woman. Lee Min-jun points in another direction. She's aiming at Princess Burmy. Del can't believe he's getting involved with a Shoutanian. She asks if he thinks she's some kind of idiot to believe that. Del says that Lee Min-jun has no idea what she had to go through just to see him again, and she can't believe he's lying to her over another woman. The girl, with tears in her eyes, yells that they promised never to lie to each other. Looking at the monster and the man in front of her, she keeps shouting, asking if he forgot. The man, with a serious look, says that none of what he said was a lie. He starts reaching for something behind his back at his waist and says that it was something they promised when they got married. Then, looking at the woman, he asks if she forgot they're divorced, and that clearly catches the girl by surprise. Serious, he says that's fine then, Princess Burmy from the Galenko dimension. He goes on saying that, as a suspect in the theft of the warehouse belonging to the ancient dragon Jenkinson, he pulls out his knife, which glows purple and pink, and tells her he's going to arrest her. A lizard then speaks, telling Burmy not to forget that the Galenko dimension belongs to the Shoutanians. Then the monster says that the other species are nothing but filthy invaders, and that she must never forget that. In exchange for accepting immigrants from other dimensions, the council gave them control over the egg cycle and medications to enhance gold purity. He thinks they never should have accepted that because those very gifts became curses, especially when the immigrants banded together to destroy them. He says the invaders changed the cycle from once a month to once a day and increased the egg size drastically. There was a rise in Shoutanian women who chose to die rather than suffer the agonizing pain of producing one egg per day. Even though they had the power to stop ovulating for years after laying a fertile egg, the invaders banned men and women from meeting. Soon, the Shootanians lost their own right to give birth and reproduce how they wished. Closing the book, he finishes by telling Burmy not to forget that they Shootanians weren't like this from the beginning. With tears in his eyes, the lizard man says they used to have rights. Then we see a beautiful technological city from above with gigantic arches. A golden lizard says that after ending up there, he had hoped to rewrite their history and reclaim the rights of the Shootanians. The lizard looks back and thinks that hope turned out to be foolish. Then we see tears streaming from his eyes, filled with deep sadness. With the sun behind the arches, they remembered their mother. Some time later, we see the arches generating electricity and a portal at the center with a woman staring into the distance. The woman seems lost in thought while observing the portal. Someone calls her Del from behind, and she slightly turns her head. The man arrives and apologizes for making her wait, saying he had a lot to report at immigration, while she replies it's okay. The two then face each other in silence for a while. Still shy, the girl looks down and says she should be the one apologizing for causing such a mess. The man pauses, stunned that she's apologizing for such a small mess, thinking she used to do way worse back in the day. She says she thinks it's just her personality, used to acting fast, while the man wonders if she's reading his mind. Del goes on saying she should have stopped and listened to the man, but instead she knocked out that innocent elf. The girl says she felt so bad about it that she left a gift for her, but she doesn't know if it's enough to be forgiven. The man keeps staring at her, thinking how much she's changed, and wonders if it's because she's regaining her memories. He says what's even more important are her intentions, and he knows those intentions are about the Endelian, because that being came here to destroy him. He keeps thinking that if it were really that serious, he would have been dragged away already, and if it's not that, after a few seconds of silence while he thinks all this, he finally asks her why she came to Earth so suddenly. The girl stares at the ground, slightly embarrassed and silent. She reveals there are 3 reasons why she ended up there. Still embarrassed, she says she really wanted to see him again. Then she clasps her hands and begins to say what the second reason is. She finally says she'd like to apologize to him. Del says that ever since she, his wife for many years, fell into disillusionment and tried to destroy him. For a while, she truly believed that killing him was the only way to make him truly free. The girl then says she'll stop making excuses and that she truly feels sorry. The man who's been listening calmly keeps scrolling the page while watching her. She finally says that during all that time, she thought of ways to make it up to him. The woman says that's the last reason she came to Earth. The man asks her what that reason is. Far away, we see a convenience store close. It looks like night already. Someone types rapidly on a computer keyboard. We then see the man working at his desk with a monitor in front of him. He says this is confidential information from the Special News Council, task number 47. The report says they've obtained complete DNA samples from the following species, thought to be extinct until now: demonic goblins and metallic moss. Recalling the conversation with Del where she told him he already knows she's an Endelian, a noble pan-dimensional being. Thanks to that, she can access the Council's secrets. Secrets no species ever dreams of approaching. She continues, saying it's not much information, but if that means she can start making things right with him. The man thinks that even the fact that Del is an Endelian doesn't make it easy for her to access that kind of information. Then he looks up at the moon, thinking about the girl, and wonders what her true identity really is. The girl is sitting near the portal when suddenly a voice says it finally found her and asks if she can hear. The person says they know she doesn't want to work, but asks why she had to escape to such a distant dimension. The girl tells them to unlock the seal then, and the voice replies it's already unlocked and that the terminal's functions have been restored so she can run and leave. The voice starts talking to her about work, but she nervously dismisses it. Still with the portal open in front of her, she gets up calmly. She looks back and says she's leaving now. Once again, the two are face to face, staring at each other, letting silence create tension between them. He stares at the girl, mouth slightly open, not knowing what to say. A soft glow starts to form around the two as the girl turns slightly. Still with her eyes closed, she says she'll see him later. Then a beam shoots out from the portal toward the sky. We then see a framed quote by Benjamin Franklin, saying that in this world nothing is certain except death and taxes. Then, in a building owned by Jenkinson, someone says that quote is very insightful. The man says it's especially important for him, since every month he has to pay a fee not to be killed. He's sitting back in his chair, eyes closed, looking relaxed. The other man standing says he's right. Adjusting in the chair, the seated man says that's exactly why. Waving a check in his hand, he tells the man to go ahead and process the payment quickly. On the check, we see a payment order for 300,000 talents. The standing man continues observing the city in silence. Then the seated man calls out to Jenkinson to get his attention. As we move closer to Jenkinson, we see something like a tear near his ear. Someone tells Minjun that they will definitely compensate him appropriately for the mission. The man is standing in front of a data projection, saying that it doesn't matter, even if it's him, and the other person clearly looks confused. He shouts that there's no way to drop 300,000 talents just like that. The seated man gasps and slams the payment order on the table. Then, stammering, he says it's fine. The other man says he's not saying he won't keep his promise and asks if the other guy also didn't know. He then says that if a civilian like him tries to pay an executor like the other, when exchanging in payments, the special provisions fee is applied. Doing the math, he says that to pay 300 talents he'd have to cough up 3 million, and even for him, that's a lot. A man then stands up and calls Jenkinson by name. He says that during the incident for taking care of Theo Christensen and protecting the terminal, the payment he received from the council was around 200,000 talents. That was what he was paid justly for his services, and now the other guy gave him boring missions for personal reasons and even handed him a blank check. He asks if the guy doesn't think he should pay more than the council did, and the other replies yes. Placing a hand on the guy's shoulder, he says he must have made a good profit just by handing over Jang Tajun's treasure to the council. Jenkinson then looks up. The man gives a slight but threatening squeeze to the boy's shoulder and says he wants the full 300,000 talents, including the special provisions fee. Elsewhere, we see a small orc happily sweeping the floor and humming. Inside, a cup is brewing coffee. Suddenly, a system window pops up to the right of the man, catching his attention. He asks how it went. The system window has a dragon symbol, and the person on the other side says everything went fine. Then explains that even with credit, they're refusing to approve the 3 million talent loan. Our man thinks he expected that already. Even if it's for terminal usage fees, missions, or taxes, the council refuses to accept anything other than talent, a universal currency even between dimensions. The council holds patents over various technologies, including dimensional jump tech, and charges a small fee for the use of each of them. So even after collecting the talents used to pay the fees, they still charge interest on the debt. The man looks at the screen and asks what that has to do with him, to which on the other end, Jenkinson replies that it doesn't matter how you look at it. Paying a ridiculous amount like 2.7 million talents just in fees is completely insane. Considering those bastards did nothing for him, he can't think of anything else except getting angry. The man then throws out the question, does he plan to commit tax evasion? He adds that he can already hear the special forces from the tax collection agency knocking on his door. He says he can hear the dreams of dragons being torn in half, heads separated from bodies. The other man yells, asking what he means by tax evasion. He's just trying to think of a legal way to reduce the taxes he has to pay. The man asks how, while the other tells him to let him explain the plan first. Some time passes while the plan is laid out to the man, who thinks that maybe the only way to avoid paying taxes is to receive compensation directly from the council. In other words, he's offering help in exchange for a special mission like the one Dell was offered. Some more time passes and the man calls out to Jenkinson, who then asks him if it isn't a good method. He responds that he's not interested and tells him to just deposit the money into his account, then hangs up immediately. Jenkinson stands still in front of his desk, deep in thought. We then see a faucet dripping water. Once again, we see a man typing on his keyboard. The man thinks that lately his earnings have been substantial thanks to all the big cases he's been getting, and it could get even better. He thinks that if he can maintain this pace, getting out might not be just a crazy dream anymore, even though he thought he'd be the next one to get removed. We see a smiling man in a jacket as he thinks about the name Bradley. Then he continues focused, writing his report. We see a series of open windows on his computer, with lots of code scrolling. What we're seeing is a conversation with messages going back and forth. He then thinks that all of them are alive and well. He picks up his mouse again to keep browsing. Suddenly, something strange catches his eye. He's received a message from the council. The message says it's a notification of an irregular fee audit. Upon opening the message, he sees it's an investigation into tax evasion. He's shocked, wondering why now, and no matter how much he thinks about it, he can't figure out anything wrong he might have done. We see several threatening red messages on the screen. Tense, he wonders what their goal is in doing this. On the monitor, several red message boxes appear with a highlighted tax audit warning. The man stands still, staring at his screen, wondering what he did to be audited. He wonders if he did something wrong, and why. After 500 years, it's happening now. The man can't think of a single thing he's done that would have caused this. Then he wonders if it was when Dell and Jenkinson helped him. He asks himself if that violates any rules. That girl wouldn't have helped him without knowing something like that first. He wants to ask her about it, but knows the council monitors all interdimensional communications through the network. So he grabs an old cell phone and says that's the only way to reach her. He sits in the chair and exhales, thinking that now the only thing he can do is wait for his ex-wife to call. The very next second, the phone starts vibrating, and he thinks that's impossible. He quickly picks up and asks what happened. An elf says she has something to tell him. The operator says that Princess Burmy wants to speak with him, so he asks if it's really the princess. She confirms it while looking at a photo of a lizard man on her computer. The operator says Jenkinson can't do much in these situations, given that she's royalty. The man says he can't torture her like he did with Mansick, and the operator confirms that. He then asks how the princess's interrogation is going, and the elf says she tried speaking to her last week. She kept practicing her right to remain silent, until suddenly she said she'd only confess if it were to him. The elf says things got more intense than she expected, and the man asks why. She explains that the council requested the case be transferred to a new jurisdiction and that the suspect be extradited. This was part of various treaties the council signed with Earth. He says even if it takes a few days to process, the case will still end up in the council's hands, and the woman agrees. The elf says that if he looks at the way they usually handle things, she's sure the council will take the princess and never release the results of the investigation. If they send the princess without getting any information, Earth will fall for the same trick again. So in order to adjust the provisions, she asks him to help. He thinks for a moment and says there's no way to avoid it, and that he'll go tomorrow. The next day, we see a bookstore open on a beautiful morning. The man walks out the door and greets the little orc sweeping the storefront, and the orc greets him back. He takes out his phone and thinks that, in any case, that crocodile is making things harder. Walking down the sidewalk, he thinks that even so, it's good to be prepared for the future. It'll be easier for him if there's a system in place. A system window appears in front of him, catching his attention. He receives a call and answers it. The orc sees the man standing still for a while and wonders if everything's okay. Next, we see a booted foot in the grass, and we see the man walking through what appears to be a park. He heads to the door of a container. A system window appears in front of him. The window displays a message saying there have been changes to his audit schedule. He thinks, why doesn't the council just say they're going to ambush him and won't give him any time to come up with countermeasures? Opening the container door and walking in, he thinks this is all such a pain. Inside the container, it looks like a backup location. A short distance away, there's a man sitting in an armchair. This man says he's arrived, looking at our guy. He stands up and comments that since he had that appearance on Earth for some time. He starts walking, each step echoing with his shoes. Standing in front of our hero, he extends his hand and says they should greet each other the same way it's done on Earth. He says he's the investigator for this audit, second lieutenant of the foreign tax evasion team. Then he asks our guy to cooperate, thinking that the man might send him to meet God if he doesn't. He shakes his hand and says it's a pleasure to work together. Several system windows appear around them as another armchair materializes. The auditor sits and tells the man to take a seat too. He apologizes, saying there have been some sudden changes. Smiling, he asks if they should begin. Our man says it's fine, as long as it's done quickly, because he had to rearrange his entire schedule due to the changes the council made. The auditor then says that in that case he snaps his fingers and some of the system windows disappear. He says he'll get straight to the point. A small hole opens in his finger, and a black energy with red edges begins to flow out. He draws a chart in front of him, saying that recently, the man's talent balance saw a substantial increase. Our hero keeps an expressionless face as he looks at the chart. The auditor asks him to provide his own explanation for that. Our man begins explaining that recently there's been an increase in large cases and events in Korea, and he's been justly rewarded for his work. The auditor says he understands that Korea's immigration services accept commissions from private companies, and that the owner of one of those companies is the Dragon Jenkinson, with whom he's had a long-standing interaction. He asks if the dragon gave him advantageous jobs or if there were any irregularities while he was performing those tasks. Outside the container, our hero steps out the door and starts walking. He finally takes a deep breath, looking at the setting sun. Back in the audit, he says that the reason the dragon entrusts him with tasks is because he knows his capabilities, and he asks the auditor to look at the reports he's been submitting. Looking at the digital files in front of him, the auditor says yes, that does appear to be the case. Closing the files, he says he'll close the investigation for now and will contact him if any additional information is needed. Our guy thinks that, in any case, they're exhausting. They get hung up on trivial and small things. Then he thinks that maybe they still don't know about the thing he's really worried about. He thinks he needs to resign soon before things reach that point. We return to the bookstore at the end of the day. The frying pan thanks Newnham for finding her and asks what kind of dishes she can help make that day. Smiling, she says she wants to make something that Min-jun likes. She thinks he got news that one of his closest friends passed away and that maybe that's why he's been so down lately, and she wants to cheer him up. The frying pan asks what kind of food he likes, and she says he prefers soft foods and hates anything crunchy. She asks the girl if there's anything she doesn't like, and the girl says she's not really into fish dishes. The frying pan says that makes sense considering the girl's abilities, and the girl, offended, asks what the frying pan meant by that. She says it's part of her functions. She knows people's powers as long as they're holding her handle. The girl asks if Min-jun knows about that function. The frying pan says no. She's shy and not very good at self-promotion. She wonders what kind of pervert installs a function like that in a frying pan. After a few seconds, she says it's fine. What matters is that they get started on making something tasty. The frying pan says that the first step in any fry is preheating the pan. She then shouts to heat her up to the max. Later, Min-jun arrives and finds a beautiful banquet waiting for him, and he asks what all that is. York tells him to eat already, and says that Kathy made everything by herself. Our hero, surprised, wonders if he heard that right, that she made it all. York says it really turned out delicious, and he asks if they're messing with him. He says no and asks why they would, and adds that apparently the frying pan made everything. Offering him a piece of meat, he insists it's serious and tells him to try it. He stares at the piece of meat held in the chopsticks in front of him, then decides to eat. Some time passes after he starts chewing. He thinks that this must be some kind of miracle, as he clearly savors the meat. Finally, he glances sideways at the frying pan. Apparently there's only one of her left in the universe, and he should add a premium tag to her and sell it. That would help, since he's saving money for the day he quits. That would make him a free man sooner. The orc then remembers something he wanted to say, catching the man's attention. He asks if he can borrow that frying pan. Right when he was starting to think about selling her, the orc says it's a crime not to use treasures like that. He thinks he got that item while on a mission. Thinking of the auditor, he wonders if they'll try to come after him for profiting from it. Our hero says he'll lend it to the orc but tells him to be very careful, thinking he'll sell it later. The next day, we see the building of Jenkinson's companies. Our hero is in the elevator, going down. He says he came alone as promised and also pressed the button to activate the noise-canceling barrier. Facing the lizard, he says it's fine, let him make his confession, and calls him Princess Burmy. He tells her to start with the man who made the offer. Apparently, they promised to help her by using the council to allow the Shutanians to enter the United Realms. The crocodile seems to take a deep breath. Then he says it wasn't a scam, but our hero says the princess was tricked. He says you have to be part of a delegation or an ancient race in the universe to persuade the council like that. The princess says that's all the more reason it wasn't a scam, because the broker was from an ancient race. She says a delegate of an ancient race could do lobbying with the council. He then asks if she confirms that information. The crocodile says he swears there is no lie in his words, and begins to tell about the day they came to him. He says he saw it with his own eyes. He asks if she really saw someone from an ancient race with her own eyes, and the crocodile says yes. Then, looking at the crocodile, he asks which race it was. He then reveals it was a Chabith. He goes on to say that he only accepted the plan because the broker was from that ancient race. Our hero asks if they were also behind the warehouse incident. The crocodile says he didn't know what was in the cargo. They simply loaded what they brought into the jump ship. He goes on to say the Shutanians would have been free if they had helped a few more times, but they failed miserably on their first try. Our guy then thinks he said a few more times, in the plural. He asks which places they plan to rob next, but the crocodile says he already told him earlier. He doesn't know the details. Our guy then wonders if the princess was nothing more than a pawn. He thinks it'll be a waste of time to keep questioning her. Then he announces he's ending the questions here. The crocodile says he doesn't think there's any reason for them to meet again in the future. Our guy starts walking out of the place. The princess stays put, watching him leave. Back in Jenkinson's building, someone asks, "What do you mean a Chabith, and why would they do something like that?" Our hero says he doesn't know any more than that. The dragon then says he wouldn't have imagined they'd get involved with people that powerful. The man then calls out to Jenkinson. Then he asks what's going on that he still hasn't received the payment. The dragon asks for a little more time and says he's trying to figure out how to move an absurd amount of money like that. He says if it's that difficult, why doesn't he just choose to pay with his own body? Jenkinson is shocked, saying there's no way he could sell a dragon's body, but our hero corrects him and says he meant by working. The dragon is left looking dumbfounded, repeating the word work. Sometime later, he's looking at a few files in his hands and says they want to look inside the DNA of all the goblins living on Earth. Our hero says yes and asks why. He says that even if they look only at the goblins living in Korea, Most of them don't have insurance and have never even been to a hospital. But even so, they want the DNA of every goblin on the planet. Our hero gets up and says he really thinks that's a pretty tall order, and Jenkinson confirms, saying that's exactly what he was trying to explain. Then, walking toward the door, our hero says that's his problem, not his. He says that if he can't give him his money, then he should work for it. Jenkinson is left standing there dumbfounded as our man walks away. Our man thinks that this is the confidential information needed for special task number 47. A long time ago, it's said that the blood of demonic goblins was mixed with the blood of regular goblins in a certain dimension. The descendants of those goblins spread across many dimensions, and among them is Earth. It's basically like looking for a needle in a haystack. He thinks that if an ancient dragon helps, it will go much faster, and the elf calls Agent Minjun, asking for a minute of his attention. She apologizes and walks over to him. The woman lost the contact information of the person with tentacles on their back, and our hero asks why she wants it. She said that person left her a gift and a letter saying they were sorry for scaring her. When she opened the gift, some kind of magic was suddenly activated, and it got stuck between her fingers. She says it might be useful to her someday, but she's scared because it won't come off no matter what she does. Our hero says he'll try to find the person's contact information while the elf thanks him profusely. He thinks that the woman apologized for scaring the elf and gave her that thing. Our hero says she could buy an entire planet with an artifact like that. Then he thinks of Dell as a non-traditional rich girl. Walking to his office, he asks what the hell this girl did that's worth 500,000 talents. A being is looking at his system window and says a tax evasion investigation was carried out personally by a member of the council. He analyzes and says the man was in contact with an Endelian princess and exceeded his limits. But after a deeper analysis of the man's psyche, he confirmed that the man has not yet recovered memories about his identity. So the snake thinks that even if he doesn't recover the memories from before the modifications, it would be dangerous to use him as a prisoner, and then he asks what the other person, called Dades, thinks. The other person, who seemed distracted, says yes. The bird says, what does a low-level employee like him even know? Then continues saying that he simply follows rules made by people superior to him. The snake says he doesn't know much about ASIF 666 either, only that he pays a survival fee of 2,000 and it costs 5 million to get out, and also knows that he's the creator of dark magic. The bird is extremely surprised that he's the creator of dark magic and says that must be why his exit fee is so absurdly high. The snake says he understands that using inventions with bad intentions is a crime, but simply creating something is not. Either way, since his fee is 5 million, that can only mean he must have done something truly terrible. And that's what the snake is worried about, because the odds are absurdly low. But if ASIF 666 can actually make 5 million, then they really will have to let a man like that walk free.
Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.